Chapter 3963. Lu Xingyuan finally stops in front of Mu Yan. Half of the girl's body is soaked in sand and blood, but the half of her face that is exposed is still so holy and flawless, bright and moving. Lu Xingyuan's mind unconsciously emerges the scene from 1,000 years ago. The red-clothed youngster burned by the raging fire, and the sorrowful, regretful, and desperate cry of the master of the god music sect, Bailey Lu. The god musicians and the demon of destruction, these two sides always seem to be entangled, bound by cause and effect. 1,000 years ago, to destroy the demon of destruction, Qi Huang, the god music sect must be eliminated first. It is still the same today. Lu Xingyuan raises the staff in his hand, looks up at Luo Yunxiao, and says in a hoarse voice, "Yunxiao, you told your master that you liked a woman. Presumably, she is the successor of the god musicians. In that case, you can watch carefully now. Watch how I kill her and end your karma." Lu Xingyuan's voice comes to an abrupt stop, staring at the person in the golden light shield in a daze. Luo Yunxiao has stopped crying at some point. Even when he took away the last trace of the Xiao Yao sect people, he didn't make the slightest sound. At that time, Lu Xingyuan was led by a kind of sad and desolate emotion, so much so that he didn't notice this abnormality. At this moment, Luo Yunxiao's skin has long been broken beyond recognition. Every inch is stained with blood, revealing the eerie white bones. His mind is riddled with holes and will be annihilated at any time. The non-phase cauldron above his head is still flashing with golden light, and the sound of the wooden fish and Buddhist chants enter his ears. Every sound is painful and torturous. Every sound is the abyss of hell. But Luo Yunxiao doesn't seem to hear or feel anything. He just stares at Lu Xingyuan with his red and cold eyes, as if he wants to deeply engrave his appearance into his soul, bring him into reincarnation, and never forget. If he still has reincarnation, Lu Xingyuan's heart beats uncontrollably. He has seen too many mortal tribulations and the appearance of his victims before they die. But there has never been a host that makes him as frightened as Luo Yunxiao, giving birth to an indescribable fear in his heart. Lu Xingyuan composes himself and softly says, "Amit Ba." Then he raised the mallet in his hand and knocked it down slowly. However, at this moment, the sound of an arrow piercing through the air could be heard. Lu Xingyuan suddenly stopped knocking on the wooden fish. A dazzling golden light shot out from his eyes. The mallet in his hand had already disappeared. He raised his slightly wrinkled hand in midair and gently caught it. In the next moment, a pure black arrow was caught between his fingers. Lu Xingyuan looked at the arrow in his hand with a rare look of surprise on his face. "It's the arrow of curse." His figure disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, the 5 fingers of his right hand were already firmly wrapped around Chu Moli's neck. He slowly lifted him up from the wheelchair. "Amit Ba, even I didn't expect that there would be so many crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the Xiao Yao sect. It's fine to have a Shun musician successor. There's actually someone who can master the curse art to such a level." Lu Xingyuan looks at the frail young man in front of him, who looks as if he will break at any moment, and gently shakes his head. The Shun musician is certainly terrible, but the successor of the curse is an even more terrible existence. Even Master hasn't been able to figure out the identity and origin of your curse clan. The curse art you've displayed is the most exquisite I've ever seen in my life. Chapter 3964. Chumoli, right? Fortunately, I met you when you were at your weakest. Only in this way could he eliminate the root of the problem without any future trouble. It would also reduce the possibility of a calamity descending upon the world. Lu Xingyuan's fingers were about to exert force, but he saw the pale youth slowly raise his eyelids and meet his gaze. His black and white eyes were calm and gentle, even carrying a trace of an indecipherable smile. "Master Xingyuan, right? I don't know if you noticed, but I shot 2 arrows." Lu Xingyuan was startled, and he quickly turned his head to look. When he saw that the formless karma cauldron didn't cause any accident and that Luo Yunxiao was trapped inside, he was relieved. Then, he heard the youth's low and hoarse voice with a hint of a smile. You looked in the wrong direction. It wasn't easy for me to shoot those 2 arrows. I prepared them for so long. How could there be a slight deviation? Buddha said, if I don't go to hell, who will? Since Master wants our Xiaoyao school to go to hell, why don't you accompany us? Lu Xingyuan's complexion changed greatly, and he suddenly turned his head to look. The scene that entered his eyes caused his pupils to suddenly contract. Not far away, he saw a young girl in snow-white clothes slowly walking out of the forest covered by tall trees. A group of beauties are hard to chase, the heavenly fragrance of beauty. Her beauty could topple a city, and her elegance was unparalleled. It was June Mayan, but how could it be June Mayan? Her doppelganger had clearly been destroyed by him, and even her original body was on the verge of death. Could it be? Could it be that the 2 he killed were only phantom doppelgangers? Lu Xingyuan looked over in shock. He saw the young girl's corpse, which he thought was the original body, slowly dissipating. That was actually only a phantom doppelganger. June Mayan, who was in her early 20s and had the cultivation of a small golden immortal, had actually cultivated 3 phantom doppelgangers. The most frightening thing was that it was hard to distinguish the real from the fake. Even he didn't notice it, so that the 2 doppelgangers that were seen by his eyes were dumbfounded. Chu Moli's low and joyful voice once again came to his ears. Master Xingyuan, our Xiaoyao school has always been hospitable. Next, my junior sister will properly entertain you. We will be waiting for you in hell. Lu Xingyan softly chanted Amit Ba, then suddenly exerted force with his fingers, snapping Chu Moli's throat, and threw his corpse to one side. Benefactor Chu seems to be a little too arrogant. He actually thinks that you can fight against me. Lu Xingyuan conjured a golden Buddha's light that enveloped his hands, slowly expelling the contamination of the curse technique. His gaze fell on Mu Yin without blinking, and there was some curiosity on his face. Benefactor Jun, even this poor monk is very curious now. Even if you have a 3rd avatar, what can you do to me? With just a golden immortal and a little girl, would she be able to survive a moment in the hands of an immortal venerable like him? As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Xingyuan suddenly disappeared. In midair, he made a grabbing motion and a golden staff appeared in his hand. He smashed it towards Mu Yin. Then, Lu Xingyuan saw a scene that shook him to the core. At some point in time, a black aura began to swirl around the girl's chest, condensing into an arrow. That was the cursed arrow that Chu Moli had shot out. But it was very clear that this arrow was completely different from the one that attacked Lu Xingyuan. Its goal wasn't to injure or kill. It was to break. At some point, a blue halo appeared around the girl's body, firmly blocking the cursed arrow. Chapter 3965. But in this world, there is no energy more powerful than the corruption of the curse. As time goes by, a small black hole gradually appears on the blue halo. The blue halo keeps shaking, and mottled cracks begin to appear behind it. There's a loud bang. The blue halo and the arrow of curse disappear at the same time. Mu Yin slowly raises the 7 absolutes sword in her hand, her face as cold as frost, her eyes like stars. A gust of wind suddenly rises, sweeping up the gravel on the ground. The trees in the jungle behind her are blown askew, making a rustling sound. The sea roars, rolling up monstrous waves. Between heaven and earth, spiritual power and immortal energy begin to form huge whirlpools and hurricanes, wrapping around Lu Xingyuan. Heaven and earth give birth to the 5 elements. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth complement each other, but cannot coexist. Once they coexist, it becomes barren, unable to cultivate. But the moon spirit root is different. It is like the ancestor of all things, with its light, with its dust, all-encompassing, without beginning or end. When the 5 spirits gather, the primal chaos is formed. Only a true moon spirit root can master the unique power of the world, the power of the 5 elements. Under the power of the 5 elements, I am the only king. Only my command is the truth. Disobey, die. Rebel, die. The world is vast, all spirits obey. Lu Xingyan, who was not shocked when he learned of Chu Moli's identity, is now completely shocked. The power of the 5 elements. She has mastered the power of the 5 elements. How can someone at this age, with this cultivation, master the power of the 5 elements? A creepy feeling runs up his spine, and his whole body is covered in a thin layer of sweat. Above the sky, countless dark clouds begin to gather. That represents the deterrence and fear of the heavenly way. The power of the 5 elements. That is a power that can go against the heavenly way. Swish! Mu Yin swings her sword, shaking the world. Lu Xingyuan immediately shakes his robe and sets up a shield around himself. However, not long after the protective barrier was set up, an invisible force forcefully tore the protective barrier apart. Boom! The sharp sword light hits his chest, causing his face to pale. A fishy taste rises in his throat, and he forcibly swallows it back down. So this is the power of the 5 elements? On the shore of the Bohai Sea, there were floating islands, mountains, rivers, and seas, and all living beings. At this moment, he had become the little girl's combat power, a hand that wanted to crush his life. Lu Xingyuan's figure kept retreating towards the direction of the sea. At the same time, his hands quickly formed hand seals. With a speed that could only be seen by the naked eye, he set up layer after layer of barriers around his body. Mu Yin doesn't chase after him right away. Instead, he raises his hand and collects the corpses of his senior and junior brothers, and Qi went into the Tian Emochin space. He then raised his sword and slashed at the formless karma cauldron that was trapping Luo Yinxiao. Boom! The phaseless karma cauldron swayed, but the barrier of light did not dissipate. Mu Yin clenched her teeth and swung her sword again. The phaseless karma cauldron emitted a teeth-numbing cracking sound, but it still failed. Why? Mu Yan's eyes are completely red. They had given everything they had, but why couldn't they save little martial uncle? She was indignant. How could she accept this? The sky that had been clear just a moment ago was now covered by dark clouds, and the night was dark. The rumbling thunder was like the final talisman of death, ringing in his ears over and over again. There's no time. Mu Yin, listen to me. A hoarse male voice resounds in her ears, causing Mu Yan's hands to tremble and stop her slashing motion. Chapter 3966. She lifted her eyes and looked at little martial uncle. She didn't know if it was because the sky was too dark or because the smell of blood was too heavy, but her vision was blurred. However, that familiar voice was still so bone-chilling and gentle. It was as if at this moment, all his kindness and gentleness were used up. In this life, I will never regret being a member of the Xiaoyao sect. In this life, I will never regret falling in love with you. If there is no next life, then remember what I'm saying now. If there is a next life, I hope you can call me little martial uncle again. Mu Yin, let's go and find the one you should find. At least one person of the Xiaoyao sect should survive. At least one person should be happy. Mu Yan's eyes widened. She heard herself screaming at the top of her lungs, broken, messy, crazy. She couldn't even hear the words, little martial uncle. She had a lot of things to say. She wanted to tell little martial uncle that big martial brother and the others were not dead. Before the battle, she used the skill, Nirvana of Stars, to give them a chance to live. She wanted to tell little martial uncle that the Xiaoyao sect only had one little martial uncle. She wanted to protect him even at the cost of her own life. How could she watch him be tortured to death? She wanted to tell little martial uncle that no matter what he had experienced, no matter what kind of suffering he had suffered, as long as he returned to the Xiaoyao sect, everything would be over. They would use the warmth of home to make little martial uncle forget his suffering. From then on, he would live a peaceful and happy life. No one could bully or hurt him anymore. She was the king of the 5 elements. But at this moment, she could do nothing. She could only watch little martial uncle shatter his heart, lose his vitality, and die under the torture of the formless karma cauldron. Mu Yin walked towards Luo Yinxiao step by step. As soon as she got close to the formless karma cauldron, the light shield was bounced off and her body was burned. She approached again and again, but was bounced off and burned again and again. Tears blurred her vision, but couldn't blur her clear and desperate mind. Little martial uncle was dead. The Xiao Yao 7 lost their master on the cultivation continent, and they lost little martial uncle on the floating island. From then on, they were orphans. May we live forever in this life and night, free and unfettered forever. That night, the moon shone brightly in the starry school, and the stars shone brightly. The melodious music of the guqin, mixed with the sounds of laughter, still lingered in their ears. They clinked glasses with each other and said the warmest and most sincere wishes. Back then, Muyen had thought that with a moon like this, with the sounds of laughter and the aroma of wine, she would have no regrets in the future, no matter what dangers she faced in the hell of Mahanata. But how could she have thought of that at that time? In this life, this night is not long. That night is eternal. Eternity was like a shooting star. It only lasted for a short period of time, but it was deeply engraved in one's heart and could never be recovered. Rumble. The thunder that had been hovering in the sky for a long time finally fell. The 7 absolutes sword in Muyan's hand was struck by the lightning, causing her to spit out a mouthful of blood. Her internal organs felt like they were being overturned, and the pain from the scorching flames gradually made her mind clear. Her eyes were dyed even redder by the blood. He suddenly turned his head to look at Lu Xingyan, who was on the surface of the sea, and his figure turned into a bolt of lightning as he charged over. It was this person who killed young Martial Uncle. It was him who sent young Martial Uncle from the human world to hell again and again. It was him who mercifully dominated young Martial Uncle's miserable life. She could no longer avoid the divine punishment thunder. Chapter 39-67. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Boom! A sword slashes out, moving mountains and overturning seas. The barrier that Lu Xingyuan has just laid down is instantly destroyed. But there's not much fear on his face, because he knows very well that the power of the 5 elements is too much for the current Mayan. She simply can't hold on for too long. Lu Xingyan doesn't even need to expend too much energy. He just needs to watch quietly from the side. He can watch Mayan's body collapse on its own because it can't bear the power of the law. This is also good. Killing the ruler of the 5 elements, he will also suffer the backlash of the 5 elements. Next, he has more important things to do. There's no need to hurt himself to deal with a puny golden immortal. Dingling. Just as he's thinking this, a melodious sound of a zither reaches his ears. Then Lu Xingyuan finds that the tip of the sword that was close at hand has disappeared. On the contrary, a white and ice-cold hand suddenly clasps his shoulder. Prison drawing. A low, hoarse female voice rings in his ears. Immediately after, a ray of light shrouds the surroundings along with the sound of the zither. Lu Xingyuan finds that his body can't move for a while. He looks up at the girl close at hand and gently shakes his head. Do you think you can kill me like this? Benefactor June, you underestimate the strength of a venerable immortal. The power of the 5 elements is powerful, but no matter how powerful a heavenly sacred artifact is, in the hands of a tender child, it's just a pile of scrap iron. Mayan grins, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. The girl's smile is bright and moving, her peach blossom eyes rippling with light, but for no reason, it exudes a bit of bone-piercing chill. Old bald donkey, go to hell. Lu Xingyuan's complexion suddenly changes. The robe he's wearing suddenly swells up. The golden pattern above emits a dazzling light. He wanted to use the fastest speed to escape from the drawing ground imprisonment as restraints. He wants to stay far away from this crazy little girl in front of him. But it's still too late. The sky is densely covered with dark clouds. It's pitch black everywhere. There's the rumbling of thunder everywhere, intertwining with the lightning tearing through the sky. So much so that Lu Xingyuan doesn't notice. Unknowingly, most of the heavenly punishment thunder and the purple lightning have already appeared around the 2. Lu Xingyuan looked at the little girl as if he was looking at a monster. She actually controlled all the 5 elements and brought them to her side. But it wasn't to attack. Instead, it was to draw all the divine punishment, heavenly lightning, to himself. From the moment Luo Yunxiao committed suicide to the moment she rushed to the Bohai Sea, she was already prepared to die with him. Lu Xingyuan had to admit that this was indeed the most effective way to kill him. But in this way, Junmai and herself would undoubtedly die. Lu Xingyuan opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. But in the next moment, a loud clap of thunder drowned out his voice. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Dense lightning fell from the sky. The 7 absolute swords trembled and wailed as if they were crying. At some point, the sound of the zither had also dissipated between heaven and earth. The thick clouds in the sky were torn apart, leaving huge cracks one after another. Through the crack, one could see the Milky Way and the sea. It was boiling, the stars moving, and 1,000 years passing in an instant. Mu Yin slowly closed her eyes, allowing the heavenly lightning to penetrate her body and tear her soul apart. Tears slowly fell from the corners of her eyes, but before they could drip into the sea, they had already been blown away by the strong wind. Chapter 3968. The heavenly thunder came so quickly and fiercely that Mu Yin didn't even have the time to review half of her life. She didn't even have the time to say goodbye to Xiao Bao and Di Jun in her heart before she was completely taken away by the intense pain. Therefore, she didn't notice that the void spirit ring on the ring finger of her left hand suddenly burst forth with dazzling light. The concentrated thunder lasted for 2 hours before it slowly stopped. The huge tsunami engulfed the beach and the jungle not far away. All the living beings on the floating island who did not see the battle trembled in fear. Finally, the dark clouds dissipated and the blue sky reappeared. The tumbling sea calmed down and became quiet and peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. On the surface of the sea, the 2 figures fighting with their lives on the line were long gone. Another quarter of an hour passed. More than half of the forest had been washed away by the huge waves. Fierce beasts poked their heads out and approached hesitantly, as if they wanted to see what was happening here. However, at the next moment, a figure darted out of the Bohai Sea. The ferocious beasts paused for a moment before fleeing for their lives. Lu Xingyin struggled to climb to the shore, gasping for air. Looking at his current sorry state, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. The shining golden robe had become tattered at this time. Large and small burn scars crisscrossed on his body. The power of the godly punishment, heavenly thunder, was simply too terrifying. He had to use 100% of his power in order to withstand it. Even so, he still suffered serious injuries, and even the robe his master gave him was completely destroyed. Lu Xingyuan could not help but turn his head to look at the calm sea. He was only affected by the divine punishment, heavenly thunder, yet he was already in such a sorry state. That little girl had withstood almost all the heavenly lightning. She was probably dead for sure. This was good as well. The Shen musicians should not exist in this world. The inheritor of spell should not exist in this world. Heaven and earth had a vast righteousness. It should be merciful to the world. It should deliver all living beings from suffering, and it should slay the devils. For them to die on this floating island, it could be said that they died a worthy death. It was karma. Lu Xingyuan put his palms together and chanted Amit Ba in a low voice. Then, he began to chant the rebirth mantra. Buddha is merciful. Even the most heinous criminals would try their best to redeem themselves. This life of sin, I hope that my little friends can bear good karma in their next lives and live a peaceful life. After chanting the rebirth mantra, Lu Xingyuan continued forward. Most of the beach was submerged. The place where Luo Yunxiao's corpse was lying was now covered by seawater. However, the phaseless karma cauldron hovering above him was still dutifully emitting a faint golden light. Mu Yin did not know what was so special about the mortal plunder and kill. When she saw Luo Yunxiao commit suicide and shatter his heart meridian, she thought that youngest martial uncle was already dead. However, Lu Xingyuan knew that the host of the world exterminating half-soul would not die so easily. If it was so easy to kill someone, In Wuji, who had been on tenterhooks for hundreds of years, would have long disregarded the agreement with Debi Temple and made his move. There was only one way to kill Luo Yunxiao. That was to make his heart completely black with hatred, resentment, violence, and other dark emotions, resonating with the world-destroying half-soul. Only then would the world-destroying half-soul leave this body, and this round of mortal tribulation would be over. Only then could Luo Yunxiao, who was the host, be killed. Lu Xingyuan formed a seal with both of his hands and chanted. Chapter 3969. The phaseless karma cauldron, which had dimmed a little, suddenly shone brightly. The sound of the wooden fish and the Sanskrit chants suddenly became louder, lingering between heaven and earth. Painful moans came from the murky seawater. Lu Xingyuan was shocked. Through the phaseless karma cauldron, he could already feel that the resonance between the world-destroying half-soul and Luo Yunxiao's divine soul was getting more and more synchronized. Just a little bit more, and he would succeed. Could the world-destroying half-soul he took out this time be killed? Could he finally complete the task his master entrusted to him? Dang! 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 The heavy and vigorous sound of a bell rang in Lu Xingyuan's ears, causing him to suddenly stop his hand seals and chanting. The first reaction in his mind was, what is this sound? It's so familiar, yet so strange. It was as if he had heard it once, 1,000 years ago. Lu Xingyuan's pupils shrank, and he looked down in disbelief. He saw the murky seawater bubbling gently. Then, he saw a blood-stained figure slowly stand up from the seawater. His hair and clothes were stained with mud. Blood soaked through every inch of his skin. The tall figure swayed slightly, thin and weak, dirty and miserable. But under the messy wet hair, there was a pair of blood-red eyes staring unblinkingly at Lu Xingyuan. Lu Xingyuan staggered and almost fell to the ground. A bone-piercing chill rose from every inch of his bones, draining all the blood from his face. At this moment, he finally understood why the sound of the bell was so familiar. The bell of heaven and earth, the cry of the 9 souls. That was the death knell for all living beings in the world and all living beings in the 3 realms. That was the bell of the world-destroying demon, the ghost bell. Opposite him, Luo Yunxiao took a step forward. The mud and blood around him dissipated, revealing a peerless face that could turn all living beings upside down. However, her hair, which was as black as a waterfall, had already turned as white as blood. One night of heartbreak, one night of sorrow, one night of white hair. His long hair hung down, seeming to merge with his white clothes that fluttered in the wind. It was as bright as the moon, without a speck of dust. However, there was a pair of crimson, cold, and blood-red pupils, mixed in with a pure, spotless whiteness. It was so dazzling, so breathtaking. Lu Xingyuan suddenly used his left hand to grab his right hand, stopping his body from trembling uncontrollably. It wasn't that he was a coward, but his instincts made him feel an unparalleled and irresistible fear from the bottom of his heart. Was this the endless world-destroying demon that had reincarnated for 100,000 years? Was this an existence that even Master was afraid of? But how could this be? Luo Yunxiao did not produce resonance with the world-destroying half-soul. He had completely absorbed the world-destroying half-soul and fused his soul with the world-destroying half-soul. Lu Xingyuan couldn't imagine what would happen next. But he was very clear about one thing. He screwed up. Under his coercion and torture, Luo Yunxiao had not been able to complete the mortal tribulation. Instead, she had become a true world-destroying demon. If he was allowed to leave alive, what kind of catastrophe would befall the 3,000 living beings? How could he have the face to return to Debi Temple to see his master? Master, haven't you always hoped that my soul would be tainted by the darkness and filth so that I could synchronize with the world-destroying half-soul? The young man's voice was still cold and indifferent, but it was like jade rubbing against each other, indescribably attractive. As he walked forward, he carefully tidied up his clothes. Chapter 3970. After wrapping his sleeves and buttoning his clothes, he looked at Lu Xingyan and slowly said, "Now that I've done it, aren't you happy for me, master?" Lu Xingyuan's lips trembled, and he subconsciously stepped back, splashing water. He tried his best to stabilize his body and hoarsely said, "Yin Xiao, you shouldn't have done that. Fusing with the world, destroying half-soul, your consciousness and soul will gradually be swallowed up, and you will no longer be you. What's the point of living like that?" There was no expression on Luo Yunxiao's face, and his voice was indifferent. "There's no point." "But master, have you forgotten? Just now, the meaning of my life has completely disappeared. Xiaoyao School, Junmayan, since they've all disappeared, why are you still alive, master? Why do all the people in this world still want to live?" Sunlight fell on the young man's face, making his skin as translucent and white as snow. He clearly had a pair of bewitching blood-red eyes, but his temperament was still like blood from heaven, holy, pure, and inviolable. However, his words were so ruthless and cold that Lu Xingyuan couldn't help but tremble. "Since the Xiaoyao sect is gone, I'll make the world disappear too. I'll go join them. Amipa." Lu Xingyuan put his palms together and slowly chanted the name of Buddha. His eyes emitted a resolute light. "Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I'll definitely stop you." 6 hours later, the night sky was dyed red, and the bright moonlight once again sprinkled on the earth. Luo Yinxiao looked at Lu Xingyuan, who had fallen in front of him. His eyes were deep and blood-red, without the slightest reflection of starlight. Lu Xingyuan slightly opened his mouth, gasping for breath. Looking at that pair of eyes, a trace of pain and regret welled up in his heart. One thought to become a Buddha, 1 year to become a demon. He was the one who forced his only disciple to become a world-destroying demon. Was he wrong? For the world's common people, for his master's entrustment, he was duty-bound without hesitation. But did he really do the right thing? "Yin Xiao, stop! Turn back. It's too late." A ball of black flame sprang up from his chest and burned Lu Xingyuan's body completely in the blink of an eye. Luo Yinxiao looked at the empty beach, and his lips slightly moved. He seemed to want to laugh, but that beautiful face was so stiff, unable to make any expression. From the moment the Xiaoyao sect disappeared, he had lost the ability to smile. "Master, you said repent and be saved." Luo Yinxiao slowly enunciated each word. "But I've already lost my only shore, my only home. I can no longer return. If this night does not last, where will I see the bright moon next year?" He would never be able to find that carefree, warm, and happy long night again. Clang, clang, clang. The deep and distant sound of the bell rang in his ears again and again. Along with it was a low chant that came from the distant horizon. The gods had disappeared, the devils had perished, and the tens of thousands of bones in the vast Dongming Sea had withered. The heavenly Tao was in chaos, the end of life, the 9 underworlds' yellow springs tribulation. 3,000 worlds lingering in the clouds, 10,000 years of the mortal world passing by. The heavens have forsaken me, and the heavens can also be deceived. If the world forgets me, the world shall destroy me. Gods and Buddhas, listen to my words. Since ancient times, karma and evil fate, in the cycle of reincarnation, this hatred would never be extinguished. Luo Yinxiao didn't seem to hear the song echoing in his ears. He just stared blankly at the rolling waves, as if he was possessed. From dark to daybreak, and from daybreak to dark again, his divine sense spread out endlessly, searching the entire sea inch by inch. Chapter 3971. Every 2 hours, Luo Yinxiao would ask softly, "Zhu Mayan, are you still alive? As long as you're alive, will you answer me?" Yin Ruhan, Qin Jiu, Chu Moli, Lung Yuma, Ling Yuxing, Lan Lu, have you all returned? Again and again, again and again, until his voice was hoarse and his blood ran cold. The ringing of the spirit bell grew more and more urgent, and the heavenly lightning began to gather above his head once more. Luo Yinxiao finally realized. No one answered him. No one would call him Little Marshal Uncle anymore. No one would risk their lives to protect him, no matter if he was a human or a demon, no matter how strong or weak he was. There was no Xiaoyao school in the world anymore. The last bit of light in his heart, the last piece of pure land, finally disappeared completely at this moment. Luo Yunxiao closed her eyes. A trace of coldness rolled down from the corner of his eye. The moonlight shone on this glimmer of crystal, like the last ray of light between heaven and earth. From then on, there was only endless darkness. From then on, there was no more warmth or laughter. How about the 3,000 worlds? So what if they were all living beings? If the Xiaoyao sect can no longer exist in this world, then what right do you have to live on? Luo Yunxiao's figure disappeared. At the same time, in another small world, he thought that Mu Yan's soul had already flown away and scattered by the divine lightning, but he was actually experiencing the pain of his flesh and bones being crushed and recombined. 8 hours ago in the Xiuxing continent, the great war between the polar domain, the demon race, and the nether realm was originally on the verge of breaking out, but in the end, it ended in an inexplicable manner. After the nether realm army retreated and Di Mingju left, Elder Chong was certain that the demons no longer had the will to wage war with the polar domain, so he quickly ordered the troops to withdraw. During this period of time, the upper echelons of the polar domain stayed up all night to guard the universe mirror and defeating army's soul lamp. Day after day passed. Defeating army's soul lamp flickered from time to time, dimmed from time to time, and was almost extinguished. Moreover, Han Yi and the others, who have entered into a master-servant contract with Di Mingju, feel their hearts palpitate even more. This is a situation that will only occur when Di Mingju encounters a life and death crisis. Elder Chong and the others felt as if their hearts were in their throats. Every minute and every second was torture. Just when Xing Lang and the others couldn't help but want to rush to the Yanwu continent, the Qinquan mirror that has been quiet all this time finally shines with a dazzling light. Then, 2 figures stepped out of the mirror. Jun Shang, Elder Chong, and the others almost cried tears of joy. During this period of time, when there was no news from Di Mingju, every day felt like a year for them. Without Jun Shang's polar domain, it's like it doesn't have its backbone, and it could fall apart at any time. Fortunately, Jun Shang is back now. Moreover, he even saved defeating armies. Truly worthy of being their Jun Shang. No matter what kind of danger it was, it couldn't stop him. Just as Elder Chong was thinking about this, he suddenly heard the Star Wolf scream, "Jun Shang, what's wrong?" "Shut up." Di Mingju coldly scolds and uses his Qi Jin to push away Xing Lang's outstretched hand. Soon after, he pushes defeating armies away. His voice was hoarse and cold. "Go get the King of Medicine immediately." Defeating armies staggered from the push and almost fell to the ground. He didn't even bother to adjust his awkward posture, as he abruptly turns to look at Elder Chong. "Did you hear that? Quickly go get the King of Medicine. Jun Shang won't be able to hold on much longer." Defeating armies' temperament has always been cold and indifferent. Even if Mount Tai were to collapse in front of him, he wouldn't change his expression. But right now, his face is full of anxiety, and he even roars at Elder Chong. Chapter 3972. Seeing that Xing Lang wanted to help Di Mingju, defeating armies hurriedly said, "Don't get close to Jun Shang. Don't touch him." Jun Shang. After a pause, defeating armies struggled to finish his words. "Jun Shang's godhead is on the verge of collapse. You must not touch him, and you must not cause any energy fluctuations. Guard Lingxiao Hall. No one is allowed to get close to Jun Shang before the King of Medicine arrives." Elder Chong and the others were shocked when they heard this. Godhead is about to collapse. How is this possible? Elder Chong no longer questioned defeating armies. He quickly took out a talisman and burned it. In the dazzling fire, Han Chujio's slightly unhappy baby face appeared. "Brother, what are you doing? I was preparing teaching material for my baby disciple. You suddenly sent me a message, making my hand shake and the fire increase by 3 parts. The result is not over. Little Jiao, come to Lingxiao Hall." Junshang has an accident. Han Chujio was stunned. He sat up slightly, but said, Accident? He's an immortal emperor with a domineering attitude. Who could make him? Little Jio. Elder Chang's voice suddenly rose. Han Chujio's eyes sank. He finally realized that Elder Chang was not joking with him. Something really happened to Di Mingju. Han Chujio threw away the herbs in his hand, stood up abruptly, and shouted, Wait, Laozi will be there right away. Before I arrive, no one can touch him. As soon as Han Chujio entered the door, Elder Chang immediately activated the mechanism of Lingshao Hall, closed all the entrances and exits, and opened the protective enchantment. Little Jio, Jun Shang's body is collapsing. Quickly see if there's a way to stop it. Han Chujio was shocked. He had already prepared for the worst, but he didn't expect the situation to be worse than he had imagined. Godhead collapse? That is a real fatal injury. When a cultivator reaches the immortal king realm, there's a certain chance that they will be reborn and transform their mortal body into an immortal godhead. Once the godhead is molded, it can transform the spiritual power and immortal power between heaven and earth into divine power through the Dantian. The magical power performed by divine power is 100 times more powerful than immortal power. As for cultivators who were both celestial kings and celestial venerables, it would not be an exaggeration to say that there was a world of difference between the abilities of cultivators who could use divine power and those who could not. In the entire Xiaoxin continent, there were no more than 1,000 cultivators who possessed divine power. Among them, Di Mingju is the most special existence, because he'd already condensed half of his godhood when he was at the peak of the mysterious immortal realm. Invincible under the same level, this was the evaluation everyone in the Xiaoxin continent gave to this new emperor of the polar domain. It is also because of Di Mingju's astonishing talent and awe-inspiring innate talent. The godhood he had condensed was the most stable. Even if he was covered in cuts and bruises, as long as he survived, he would be able to recover quickly, and his strength would even rise to the next level. His powerful self-healing ability, as well as his confidence in turning the tables against the strong, came from his stable and powerful godhead. But now, Di Mingju's godhead has begun to collapse. Once his godhead collapsed, his cultivation would fall. Even their lifespan would be greatly shortened. From then on, they would be plagued with all sorts of illnesses, and even the celestial decay stage 5 would occur prematurely. At that time, the polar domain would be finished. Han Chujio suppressed the shock in his heart and quickly formed a seal with his hands. Under the brilliant light, the heaven void cauldron, which has shrunk by dozens of times, floated in the air. Chapter 3973. If someone saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their eyes would pop out, because the things that Han Chujio lost were all priceless treasures. Among them were even the phoenix grass and kunlun wood that he got from Di Mingju in exchange for saving his life. Either of these two treasures would take 1,000 years to mature, and they could only grow in the heavenly Wu Mountain, which was covered with black ice all year round. For thousands of years, 9 out of 10 people who entered the heavenly Wu Mountain would die. Only the immortal emperor could come and go safely. At that time, Di Mingju was poisoned by a mutated nightmare ghost. It was Han Chujio who combined the Shun musician skill, Summer Bug's language of ice, provided by Mu Yin, with the golden silkworm insect that detoxified the poison of the Changgui. At that time, Di Mingju promised to bring him the phoenix grass and kunlun wood within a year. Less than half a year later, when Di Mingju's immortal emperor realm was stable, he went deep into the heavenly Wu Mountain and picked up the 2 treasures. Han Chujio was ecstatic when he got the phoenix grass and kunlun wood. He was afraid of dropping them in his hands and afraid of melting them in his mouth. He even slept with these 2 treasures every day, thinking about how to treat them in his dreams. Later, he kept saying that he would keep these 2 treasures. When his baby disciple came up, he would show them off in front of her. But at this moment, he did not hesitate to throw these 2 treasures into the heavenly void cauldron like garbage. He met the shocked eyes of Elder Chang and the others. Han Chujio widened his eyes and said, What are you looking at? Deming Jew owes me all the treasures in this cauldron. When he wakes up, I will make him work like an ox and a horse, and pay me back 100 times. Elder Chong couldn't help but laugh. After laughing, his nose was a little sour, and his eyes were a little red. Because of the curse, little Joe's appearance looked like a young teenager, and his temperament was getting more childish every year. But he also watched Jun Shang grow up with him. At that time, Jun Shang, with a cold face, would call him Grandpa Chong and Little Jio Jogij. Han Chujio, who was already 1,000 years old, had a black face on the spot, but he still carefully treated Xiao Junshang's wound. Little Jio had never changed. He was just a hard mouth and a soft heart. Pujuan, tell me what's going on. Why did Junshang suffer such a heavy injury? Where have you been all this time? Elder Chong was comforting him when Star Wolf's low and angry voice suddenly came from behind him. At this moment, he was grabbing Defying Armies' lapel with one hand, and his other hand was clenched into a fist. The anger in his eyes was about to materialize and spit out. If this was not the critical moment for Han Chujio to treat Jun Shang, Chong Lao has no doubt that Xing Lang will directly punch him. Among the 4 great Imperial Guards, Defying Armies, Frosty Knight, Ing Mei, and Star Wolf, Defying Armies has the highest cultivation. He was also the only one among the 4 who had condensed the Godhead and could use divine power. Normally, Han Yi and Star Wolf are very apprehensive of Defying Armies, not daring to rashly provoke him. But right now, seeing Deming Ju so heavily injured, the string of reason in Star Wolf's brain completely snapped. He would rather Pujuan die outside like that than to see his revered Jun Shang suffer such a heavy injury. Defying Armies closes his eyes, grabs Star Wolf's wrist, and forcibly pulls down the hand that was clasping his lapel. Only then does he look at Elder Chong and says in a hoarse voice, "I left Jun Shang with the motherly seal. Did Jun Shang receive it?" Chapter 3974. Old Lady Seal? What Laupa seal? Han Yi and Ing Mei don't know about this matter, and they reveal curious expressions when they hear this. Star Wolf had seen the old granny seal left behind by Defying Armies. However, he didn't know exactly what message was left behind in the matron seal. Now that he heard Defying Armies mention it, he couldn't be bothered to be angry anymore. He hurriedly asked, "What message did you leave for Jun Shang? What are you doing in that damned Yinwu continent? Do you know that because of your recklessness, Jun Shang has fallen into danger time and time again?" Among them, Elder Chong was the only one who did not speak. Instead, he looked at Defying Armies quietly. Defying Armies clenched his hands into fists, then slowly loosened them. After a long while, he said in a slightly hoarse voice, 12 years ago, Jun Shang was seriously injured because of a tribal riot at the border of the polar domain. He went into closed-door training for 5 years before coming out again. You should all still remember this matter, right? Han Yi knits his brows. Of course I remember. But what does this have to do with Jun Shang's injury today and the Lao Pasil you left behind? That was Deming Ju's heaviest injury. They almost thought that Jun Shang wouldn't be able to hold on. For nearly 5 years, Deming Ju has been in seclusion in the forbidden area of the polar domain. It's unknown whether he's alive or dead. Because there had been no news of the sovereign for a long time, the people of the polar domain were anxious, and the nether domain was ready to make trouble. As one of the 4 great Emperor's guardians, the 4 of them did not have a good time during that period. Naturally, it left a deep impression on him. Defying Armies continued. You all thought that during those 5 years, Jun Shang stayed in the polar domain's forbidden area and didn't go out, right? Han Yi and the other 2 look at each other, their faces revealing doubt. Isn't that the case? Defying Armies slowly shook his head. That's not the case. In the last year of Jun Shang's seclusion, I stood guard outside the forbidden area as usual, but I suddenly felt a strange energy fluctuation coming from inside. The barrier that prevented people from entering dissipated on its own. After I entered, I discovered. He paused before continuing. Jun Shang has disappeared. What? Han Yi and the others cry out in alarm. Junshang disappeared in the polar domain's forbidden area? How is this possible? Star Wolf angrily grabbed Defying Armies' collar and angrily said, "Why did you only say such an important thing today? Don't think that just because you're an old man by Junshang's side, I won't dare to beat you up." Star Wolf. Elder Chong berated in a deep voice. Let Defying Armies finish his words first. Only then did Star Wolf angrily let go. Defying Armies continued. After I entered the forbidden area, I didn't see Junshang's figure. I wanted to go out, but I found that the barrier had closed again. I was trapped in the forbidden area. I was trapped for a few months. Suddenly, one day, the strange energy fluctuation appeared again. His lordship returned to the forbidden area, but he was severely injured. His godhead was on the verge of collapse, and it was even more serious than it is now. Starwolf fiercely clenched his fists, seeming to want to curse something, but he forcefully endured it in the end. Han Yi says in a low voice, but when Junshang came out of seclusion, not only was he unscathed, his cultivation had also advanced. What happened after that? Defying Armies laughed bitterly and shook his head lightly. In fact, I'm not sure what exactly happened, because at that time, Junshang only appeared for a moment and then disappeared again. It's as if it's being pulled away by some kind of power. At that time, I was very scared. I always felt that if I let Junshang be pulled away, perhaps Junshang would die. I only touched a little bit of the damage caused by that energy fluctuation, and I felt as if my 3 souls and 7 mortal forms were being torn apart, and my godhead was on the verge of collapse. And Junshang was in the center of that energy fluctuation. Chapter 3975. Han Yi and the others suck in a mouthful of cold air, their complexions extremely unsightly. Defying Armies continues. At that time, I wanted to break through the barrier and inform Medicine King and Elder Chong, but I failed. The barrier was incomparably strong. I simply couldn't get out. Time passed like a year in the forbidden area. Just like that, another month passed, and Junshang appeared once again. It's only been 7 years, but Defying Armies always feels that it's been a very, very long time. Probably because, for a very long time, he couldn't tell whether everything that happened in those months was real or an illusory dream. The forbidden area is dark and cold. Only the light coming in from outside the cave's barrier can illuminate the monotonous and desolate furnishings inside. As Defying Armies is in a daze, a strange energy fluctuation appears again. Immediately after, a familiar figure appears in front of him. Defying Armies is simply ecstatic. Junshang. He rushes over, wanting to help Di Mingju up. Junshang, where have you been these days? What about your injuries? Di Mingju waves his hand, adjusting his breathing for a while before saying, Bin Jun also couldn't tell what place it was, but the air was filled with the aura of desolation, and there were no fluctuations of spiritual power or immortal power. If Bin Jun didn't guess wrong, it should be the Yinwu continent. It turns out that Di Mingju was forcibly transported to a cave at that time. That cave was dark and cold, without any spiritual power or immortal power, but it was filled with a large amount of desolation. For a spirit cultivator, that kind of environment is simply terrible. But this still isn't the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing is that there's a special arrangement around that cave. Curse Land. And it's the Curse Land that only targets the Leaf Fire bloodline. As long as Di Mingju wants to leave, the Cursed Land will attack him, slowly destroying his soul and godhead. Di Mingju tried several times, but not only did he not succeed, his injuries worsened instead. It's also because of those injuries and the exhaustion of his divine power. He has no way to resist the erosion of the desolation, and his body becomes weaker and weaker. The first time he returned to the forbidden area of the polar domain, he exhausted his last bit of strength and didn't hesitate to consume his spiritual essence to fight for a slim chance of survival. But in the end, he failed. He was pulled back by that mysterious and strange energy fluctuation, and his injuries worsened, just as Defying Armies had predicted at that time. Unless there's a miracle, Ming-ju will undoubtedly die when he returns to the cave. But what's strange is that the injuries on Ming-ju's body are still very heavy this time. But his godhead has stabilized, and the death energy lingering around his body has also completely dissipated. Defeating armies was overjoyed. "My lord, have you found a way to deal with the land of the cursed god?" Ming-ju is silent for a moment, the tips of his ears inexplicably red. He then says, "Someone helped Ben-jun." When he said this, his usually stern face revealed a rare guilty expression. He dodged Defeating Armies' gaze. She didn't answer his question about who that person was. Instead, she asked softly, "Do you know how to ability?" Ming-ju is silent for a long time. Then he says in a low voice, "To win a girl's favor?" Defeating Armies thought he had misheard. What did Jun Shang say? Make a girl happy? Was this their callous and heartless Jun Shang, who could even throw a stunning female cultivator away when she came within half a foot of him? Defeating Armies opens his mouth slightly, unable to say a word for a long time. The uneasiness in Ming-ju's eyes gradually turns into disgust. "If you don't know, then go find someone to ask. 3 days later, Ben-jun will come ask you again." Chapter 3976. Defeating Armies. Wait. Jun Shang, you still want to go to that land of the cursed god? It wasn't easy to get rid of such a dangerous place. How could Jun Shang go back again? Ming-ju keeps a straight face, faintly saying, "That girl is very timid. She can't leave Ben-jun for even a moment. If Ben-jun doesn't go back, what if she cries alone?" Defeating Armies. You just asked how to please a girl? Now you say she can't leave you for even a moment? You really don't feel that your words are contradictory? No. The point is, what kind of woman could make Jun Shang care so much about her? He's really curious, and he can't help but ask the doubts in his heart. Ming-ju gently touches a piece of vermilion jade on his waist, coldly saying, What kind of woman she is have to do with you? You only need to know that she is Ben-jun's wife." Defeating Armies. No. Is Jun Shang jealous of him? Just because he asked about that woman's situation? If it weren't for the powerful and familiar pressure that Ming-ju is emitting, he would suspect that his Jun Shang has been possessed or impersonated. Moreover, Jun Shang directly calls that woman his wife. It's enough to show that Jun Shang really likes her, to the extent that he can't have her. But who is that woman? How is her innate talent? Does she have the qualifications to be the mistress of the polar domain? Is she a spy sent by the enemy to Jun Shang's side? Isn't it too hasty to recognize her as the mistress of the polar domain without knowing any of this? What's more, Elder Chang used the Luo Ming Pan of the Hunyuan River to calculate that Ming-ju's marriage fate is different from that of ordinary people. He will have a woman of destiny that is destined to belong to Jun Shang. And Jun Shang, who possesses the world's one and only sun spiritual root, can only get the greatest improvement and pry into the peak of the great Tao by combining with a woman of destiny. If Jun Shang marries an ordinary woman from the Yenwu continent, what will happen to the woman of destiny? Defeating Armies hesitates to say something, but when he meets Ming-ju's eyes, he can't say any of the words that are on the tip of his tongue. Ever since Ming-ju's mother, the Holy Empress of the Polar Domain, Bai Shengwei, passed away, Defeating Armies has never seen an expression other than callousness on his Jun Shang's face. He was clearly not a cruel and arrogant person, but he had wrapped himself in a thick layer of ice, unwilling to show even the slightest bit to others. Defeating Armies has never seen such a vivid expression on Ming-ju's face. There was joy, faint sweetness, apprehension, anticipation, and even shyness. Such a Jun Shang would no longer be that aloof and remote symbol that supported the polar domain. Instead, he would be a living, flesh and blood person. Defeating Armies suddenly thought, who is that woman? So what if they were spies? As long as Jun Shang can continue to live like this, what harm is there in letting her stay by Jun Shang's side? Jun Shang. Pajun coughed lightly and changed his question. What is that girl's name? Where do you live in the Yenwu continent? Do you need me to tell Elder Chang about the wedding? Defeating armies' rare nagging gradually stopped, because he finds that his Jun Shang's complexion is very unsightly. After a long while, he heard the man almost grinding his teeth. Bin Jun still doesn't know her name. Cough, cough, cough. Defeating armies almost choked on his own saliva. Jun Shang, how did you meet that girl? Chapter 3977. Diming Ju slightly tilts his head. A few days ago, she broke into the cave and was trapped with Bin Jun in the land of the cursed god. Defeating armies hesitantly asks. Jun Shang didn't ask about the girl's identity. I did. Diming Ju grits his teeth even more. He did ask, but she refused to tell him. She was even afraid of him, which makes him annoyed. But he can't get angry, because he also knows that on the first day, he was delirious and went too far. These 2 days, he used up all the ways he never did in his life to make that girl change her opinion of him a little. Diming Ju's words are almost jumping out one word at a time, vague and unwilling to say it out loud. Defeating armies listens for a long time and finally understands. Their Jun Shang forced a little girl? Although it's because of the effects of a land of the cursed god and the barren air invading his internal organs, making Jun Shang look like he's been drugged, delirious, and completely out of control. But defeating armies is still shocked. This is even more of an impact to him than when the poltergeist broke through the enchantment and destroyed the Xioshan continent. In vain, he just cared that the little girl was a spy sent by the enemy to murder Jun Shang. Defeating armies swallows, not knowing whether to reprimand or comfort their Jun Shang for a moment. After a long while, he dryly says, this subordinate will look for someone to ask how to please a girl. Diming Ju nods, and can't help but gently stroke the vermilion jade on his waist. Defeating armies glances at it, and asks with some doubt, Jun Shang, where did this jade come from? How could it not be crushed in such a powerful energy fluctuation and space distortion? It is reasonable to say that there is a very stable space barrier between the Xioshan continent and the Yanwu continent. Things from the two continents can't be exchanged. Especially from the Xioshan continent to the Yanwu continent, anything will be crushed in the space barrier passage. And from the Yanwu continent to the Xioshan continent, if it's a treasure, Diming Ju can use his divine power to protect it, and there's still a chance to bring it back to the Xioshan continent. But this vermilion jade is clearly ordinary, without even a little bit of spirituality. Jun Shang is seriously injured now, and can't use even a tenth of his divine power. But the jade actually passed through the space barrier passage, and followed Jun Shang to the polar domain's forbidden area unscathed. Diming Ju slightly tightens his lips, saying in an indifferent voice, she gave this to Ben Jun defeating armies. Jun Shang, are you sure you didn't steal it? Also, you obviously want to show off, so don't pretend that nothing happened. Defeating armies wanted to ask more clearly. He had a feeling that the woman was not simple. With this kind of vermilion jade, it can also save Diming Ju, whose godhead is on the verge of collapse. That was not something an ordinary woman could do. If he could obtain the vermilion jade or ask about the woman's appearance, he might be able to secretly investigate. It's just that, looking at Diming Ju's treasured appearance, defeating armies also knows that he absolutely won't be able to borrow vermilion jade. It's already been an hour? Diming Ju suddenly realizes something, and his expression changes. Bin Jun will go back first. Saying that, without waiting for defeating armies to react, Diming Ju has already disappeared from where he stood. That strange energy fluctuation was still powerful and terrifying, making it impossible for anyone to approach. But this time, defeating armies wasn't as worried as he was before. Jun Shang is safe and sound. Moreover, he seems to have a girl he likes. Chapter 3978. Jun Shang has a woman he likes. The polar domain may soon have a new mistress. Miss, did you see it in the sky? Defeating armies didn't say the rest of his words out loud. Instead, he repeated them in his heart. Miss, I will protect your child for the rest of my life. I won't let him end up like you. Jun Shang will definitely be happy. After expressing his gratitude, Defying armies decided to listen to Jun Shang's words and find someone to ask about how to make a girl happy. Ingmei couldn't do it. She was too cold and never came into contact with girls. The Star Wolf couldn't do it. He was too stupid. His mind was only filled with Jun Shang and couldn't hold anything else. Han Yi can't do it either. Normally, he behaves like a dissolute gongzi, but in reality, the amount of time he spends with women isn't as long as the amount of time he spends following behind Ingmei. Elder Chong and the King of Medicine were even more out of the question. What Jun Shang wanted was a girl's heart, not a granddaughter. TSK. Defying armies frowned in annoyance. Then who should he consult? Was he going to put on a pair of sunglasses and become a playboy? But Defying armies soon realized that he didn't need to worry about who to consult, because he couldn't get out. That enchantment had still trapped him. Defying armies can only wait in place, waiting for Di Mingju to come back 3 days later and open the barrier to let him out. However, 3 days passed. Di Mingju didn't come back. Defying armies felt uneasy. Another 3 days passed, and there were still no energy fluctuations in the forbidden area. Just as Defying armies was burning with anxiety, suddenly, the air in front of him twisted violently, and the entire forbidden area seemed to have fallen into a spatial vortex. A loud bang resounded in his sea of consciousness. Something burned his brain, and then he completely lost consciousness. At this point, Defying armies gently pressed his temple. Under everyone's shocked gazes, he slowly continued in a hoarse voice. After I woke up that time, I found myself sleeping outside the forbidden area. Everything that had happened in the past few months had become very blurry in my mind. I even thought that it was just a dream. In the dream, I saw Jun Shang seriously injured. And in the dream, I heard Jun Shang tell me that he went to the Yinwu continent and met a woman he liked. I had my suspicions as well. But very quickly, Jun Shang came out. He was completely unscathed, and his strength had even gone up a level. I once asked him if he had been to the Yinwu continent, but Jun Shang didn't have the slightest memory of this. So I became more and more convinced that it was just a dream. The only thing that I care about is probably that piece of cinnabar jade that has appeared on Jun Shang's waist. I have a vague memory of this piece of vermilion jade in my mind, but every time I try to recall it, my mind will become chaotic, as if my memory has been covered by a layer of fog, causing me to unconsciously give up exploring it. Defying armies' gaze swept over everyone present, his hoarse voice rising slightly. This situation continued until more than a year ago, when I met Little Master in Jun Shang's small world. That memory, which had already been blurred, suddenly seemed to have been brushed away by dust and mist, becoming clear all at once. I clearly remember that Jun Shang was sent to the land of the cursed god of the Yinwu continent by the strange energy of the forbidden area. I remember Jun Shang saying that he met someone in the land of the cursed god and fell in love with that person. He even had a physical relationship with that woman. And Miss June and the Little Master are from the Yinwu continent. Chapter 3979. Han Yi, Star Wolf, and Ingmei all suck in a mouthful of cold air, the expressions on their faces one more shocked and incredulous than the other. You're saying that Miss June is the woman who saved Jun Shang that year? And the Little Master is Jun Shang's biological son? Defying armies looks at Elder Chong. The others also look over. Elder Chong sighs softly. So this is the cause and effect of the matter. If Defying armies hadn't said it, I'm afraid the truth would have been buried. Jun Shang really owes Miss June and the Little Master too much. It's no wonder that Jun Shang still doesn't dare to acknowledge the Little Master. Star Wolf's eyes widen. The Little Master is really Jun Shang's flesh and blood? Han Yi, Elder Chong, you and Jun Shang already knew? Ingmei, what do you mean by not daring to acknowledge? Elder Chong glances at the closed door and gently shakes his head. After that, he recounted what had happened on the floating island. Elder Chong tries his best to speak in the calmest tone, but Han Yi and the others still have a huge change in expression, their emotions fluctuating. Li Weiran is actually Junshang's half-brother? Bastard. I knew that Li Weiran, that bastard, wasn't a good thing. He even dared to pretend to be the little master's biological father. Pei. Elder Chong, why didn't you tell us about such an important matter? Elder Chong gives them a sidelong glance, saying, Miss Jun's cultivation is still not high enough. She can't ascend to the Xiaoxing continent. If people knew that the little master is Jun Shang's biological son, who knows how much trouble would arise? You're not allowed to speak of this matter. Do you hear me? If I find out that any of you leaked it, especially if Miss Jun and the little master find out, you should know the consequences. The three of them shiver, nodding in unison. Han Yi suddenly remembers. The last time Elder Chong came back from the floating island, his entire person has become mysterious. One moment, he discusses with them how to make the wedding grand. The next moment, he asks how the abandoned scumbag can get the forgiveness of his wife and child. At that time, Han Yi thought that Elder Chong was too worried about the alliance between the demon race and the Nether Realm, so his mind wasn't normal. It turns out that the abandoned scumbag that Elder Chong spoke of is actually Jun Shang. But thinking about it, their Jun Shang seems to be quite a scumbag. Miss Jun was so young 7 years ago. She was probably pregnant before she even reached the marriageable age. Not only did she get pregnant before marriage, she even forgot about him. If he was Miss Jun, he would definitely hate this dog, a man who had abandoned her to death. Pooh pooh pooh. What dog man? That was their Jun Shang. She recalled what Chang Lao had said. Miss Jun had threatened to chop and castrate Xiaobao's biological father if she really met him. Han Yi couldn't help but shiver. The most important thing right now is to help their Jun Shang leave a good impression in front of Miss Jun otherwise. What if the polar domain's mistress and heir that are already at the tip of his tongue fly away? As Han Yi is lost in his thoughts, he is suddenly ruthlessly pinched on his waist. Han Yi couldn't help but let out a blood-curdling screech, and his whole body jumps up. Little Shadow, why are you twisting? Halfway through his complaint, he meets Ing Mei's chilly gaze. Han Yi immediately cowers and promptly says with a smile, Little Shadow, you pinched me so hard just now. Does it hurt? Do you want me to rub it for you? Ing Mei's face was still cold as he said, Men are not good things. Han Yi. Chapter 3980. Little Shadow, if you feel injustice for Miss Jun, why are you angry at him? He was very innocent. Okay. He was about to speak. The door opened with a squeak. Han Chuju staggered out from inside. Little Jio. Elder Chong quickly stepped forward to support him. How are you? Why do you look so bad? Han Chuju stared at him and said in a bad tone, You try to consume all the divine power in your body and show me your face? That bastard Diming Ju, you wasted so many of my treasures. When you get better, I will not let you off. When he said this, he almost blew his beard and stared at him. However, his face was too handsome and cute, so he didn't have any momentum. When Elder Chong saw that he still had the strength to curse, he was relieved. How is Jun Shang? Han Chujio took out an elixir and swallowed it, then coldly said, Don't worry, he won't die. After 1.5 years, he will almost be cured. But what? Han Chujio slowly converged a look on his face and said in a deep voice, This kid's breath of the God Punisher curse is getting heavier and heavier. He is relying on his powerful spirit to suppress it. If he continues like this, once the God Punisher curse backfires, the consequences will be unimaginable. Elder Chang's face changed and his voice rose a bit. How can it be? Han Chujio said with a cold face. Why not? Others may not know, but don't you know how terrible the real curse is? Once you are infected, you can't get rid of it for life. When Diming Ju was a child, he was infected with the God Punisher curse. Later, but the Divine Empress forcibly expelled it. But in the end, he was still infected with the curse. If he doesn't come into contact with the curse after that, it will be fine. But 7 years ago, Diming Ju was attacked by the curse in the border tribe. Later, I don't know where he came across the land of curse. Even his fire blood was infected by the power of the curse. Later, I don't know what kind of luck he had, but he didn't trigger the curse in his body. But good luck can only happen once or twice. The deeper he is infected with the curse, the higher the possibility of the curse relapse. If that day really comes, even I won't be able to save him. Han Chujio spread out his hands and said, "When the time comes, let that kid resign himself to his fate. Otherwise, come with this old man to the Medicine King Hall to keep you company, regaining your youth, relaxing, and maintaining your health." How interesting. Little Gio, Elder Chong shouted in a low voice, interrupting his nonsense. Then she could not help but reach out her hand and gently pat his head, saying softly, "Little Nine, there will be a chance, you will definitely have a chance to get rid of the curse. Don't forget, your precious disciple will be here soon." When he mentioned his precious disciple, Han Chujio. But when he remembers that the treasures he wanted to show off were all wasted on Di Mingju, he gnashes his teeth in hatred. I tell you, Diju, I Jujio. Xiao Chong Han, Xiao, Jio Tian Tian, Xiao Zhang Zhang, Xiao, Lao to S Chong. Chong. Elder Chong nodded with a smile. Han Xiao Chong Han, Xiao to Han Xiao again, Xiao. Han Chong to Chong. Han Chujio wanted to say something, but suddenly a loud bang was heard in the room. Their expressions changed, and they hurriedly rushed in. Everyone's expression changed when they saw the scene inside. Jun Shang, what are you doing? Why did you activate the Chinquan mirror? Chapter 3981. Di Mingju, whose face is still pale and without a trace of blood, has stood up and walked to the Chinquan mirror. The originally dim bronze mirror surface of the Chinquan mirror is now emitting a white light. Obviously, the space-time passage has been opened. Di Mingju doesn't even wear a coat. He only wears a thin, blood-stained undergarment and goes to the Chinquan mirror. Defeating armies rushes over and stands in front of the Chinquan mirror. Jun Shang, you are seriously injured and your godhead is unstable. You must not travel through the space barrier again. Di Mingju's face is cold, but there seems to be a fierce and urgent flame burning in his eyes. Get lost. Jun Shang, what happened in the end? Even if it's an urgent matter, wait until the injury is healed before going. Han Chujio's nose is crooked in anger. If it weren't for Elder Chong holding him back, he would have rushed over and grabbed Di Mingju's hair. Bastard, you wasted so many of my treasures, and you still dare to court death. Damn, if you want to die so much, Laozi will help you now. Elder Chong quickly pulls back the jumping Han Chujio and anxiously says, Jun Shang, if you have something to do, just tell us. You don't need to do it yourself. Di Mingju raises his hand and waves out his energy, directly pushing defeating armies away. His lips overflow with a little blood, but he doesn't even bother to wipe it. His figure flashes, and he is already in front of the Chinquan mirror. Jun Shang, you can't. Xing Lang rushes over and hugs his leg, begging in a hoarse voice. Jun Shang, what are you going to do? This subordinate will do it for you. I only ask you to take care of your own life. They know very well what the collapse of Godhead means. Di Mingju's life was saved by Han Chujio's painstaking efforts. A little carelessness, and his old injury will relapse, and he will disappear in a puff of smoke. Di Mingju snaps. Let go. Han Yi kneels down. Jun Shang, please think twice. Ingmei kneels down. Jun Shang, please think twice. Defeating armies also slowly kneels on the ground. Jun Shang, please think twice. Xing Lang chokes with sobs. Jun Shang, if you don't care about your life and go alone, why don't you kill this subordinate first? Di Mingju closes his eyes. The voice that comes out of his mouth is indescribably hoarse and weak. Mayan is calling me. I'm going to find her. I promised that I would never leave her alone. I would never let anyone hurt her. However, he broke his promise. In the land of the cursed god, he had sensed that Mu Yin was in danger, and he had also heard the call from the Void Spirit Ring. However, he couldn't get out. Even if he disregarded the loss of his own divine energy and the collapse of his godhead to risk his life to break the land of the cursed god shackles, it was too late. No more spiritual power fluctuations came from the void spirit ring. All the vows, all the promises, all became a joke at that moment. It was like laughing at his stupidity and weakness. Ming-ju also realized it at that moment. Everything could be a trap. He didn't know what had happened to Mu Yin that she would fall into such a desperate situation. But everything was too much of a coincidence. Over the past few days, defeating armies had been trapped in the land of the cursed god and could not leave. He could not send any messages, but he did not run into any danger. But on the eve of Mu Yan's accident, the soul lamp suddenly fluctuated. Even defeating armies doesn't know why his soul lamp became weak. And Ming-ju, who went to the land of the cursed god to look for defeating armies, was trapped inside. He couldn't go to Mu Yan's side when she needed him the most. Several people are startled when they hear that. Chapter 3982. Suddenly, Ingmei points at the void spirit ring on Ming-ju's finger. His complexion greatly changes, and his voice trembles. Miss June, what happened to her? Why does the void spirit ring have so many cracks? The void spirit ring was made by Ming-ju using his own and Mu Yan's hair, and then linking it with a wisp of his soul. Even if they were in different worlds, they could still sense each other. When one side was in trouble, the other side would use their god essence/soul essence to prolong the other's life and rescue them. With my spirit, I will save your soul. I will use my divine essence/soul essence to nourish your life force. The ethereal spirit ring was indestructible, impervious to fire and water. Even if the void spirit ring took over another body, it would follow the soul. Only under one circumstance would the ethereal spirit ring shatter. That was if one of the two sides was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Even the gods would not be able to save him. Now, Ming-ju's godhood has stabilized. However, cracks had appeared in the void spirit ring. What did that mean? The spiritual energy on Ming-ju's body vibrates, sending the star wolf flying. Jun Shang. At this moment, even Elder Chang's expression changed. He shouted at the top of his lungs, "My lord, the void spirit ring is broken, and the 3 souls and 7 spirits are scattered. It's useless even if you rush over. Let's go to the floating island and bring Miss June back, okay? Shall we bring her back and let little Gio treat her?" Xinglang desperately nodded his head. Jun Shang, this subordinate swears to you that even if I die, I will bring Miss June back safely. Jun Shang, this subordinate is begging you not to go. Ming-ju's hand is placed on the Qinkuan mirror, his expression cold and calm, just like in the past. However, what he said made Elder Chang and the others' hearts sink bit by bit. Since the 3 souls and 7 spirits are scattered, I'll give my 3 souls to her and use my 7 spirits to complete her. I'm at the end of my rope, so I'll use my divine essence to nurture her back bit by bit. I am Yinyan's husband, Xiaobao's father, but I've done far too little for them. Instead, I've let them suffer for so many years, yet I've paid no attention to them, and I don't know if they know or not. This time, I won't abandon Yinyan again. Even if I die, I want to die with her. Ming-ju lifts up the broken void spirit ring and gently kisses it on the lips. He then looked at the people in the room and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, I'm not a good emperor. If I don't come back this time, you guys can wear sunglasses and become Emperor Fu." Jun Shang. In the midst of the mournful cries, Ming-ju's figure suddenly enters the Qinkuan mirror, disappearing without a trace. The room fell into a deathly silence. Han Chuji reacted first. "Idiot, what are you doing? Go and chase after him. Isn't it just a small floating island? If he flipped it upside down without knowing where it was, wouldn't he be able to find 2 people? As long as you find him, even if it's 2 corpses, bring them back to me. I don't believe that I, the dignified sacred ancestor medicine king, can't even protect this kid Ming-ju's life." Han Chuji's loud shout made the few people, who originally felt that the sky was falling down, feel enlightened. Star Wolf was the first to rush over and activate the heaven and earth mirror. He even forgot to use his immortal power to protect himself. In a blink of an eye, only Chang Lao and Han Chujiu were left in the room. Han Chujiu, brother, aren't you going? Chang Lao gently shook his head. I'm old. I'll only be a burden if I go. What's more, the polar domain still needs someone to stabilize the army's morale. If I leave, what if someone takes the opportunity to make trouble? Han Chujiu pursed her lips and suddenly asked, if that kid Deming Ju really can't come back, will you support sunglasses and become Emperor Fu? Chapter 3983. Chang Lao's eyelids slightly drooped, covering the light in his eyes. He didn't speak. Just when Han Chujiu thought that he wanted answer, a faint voice came to her ears. The Emperor of the Polar Domain may change, but no matter where and when, I will only assist one Emperor. Who are the others? Are they qualified for me to support them? Han Chujiu froze and looked at Chang Lao in surprise. Then, he couldn't help but laugh. It's just that his laughter has the unique sound of a young man. Not only does it not seem bold and rough, but it is also immature and cute. So, after laughing twice, he stopped with a black face. This damned curse, damned it. Han Chujiu calmed herself down and hooked her arm around Chang Lao's neck. Then, she said in a clear voice, You have been as kind as Methreya for the past 2 years. I thought your temper had been polished, and you only know how to work like a horse for the Emperor of the Polar Domain. Only today did I realize that you are still the unstoppable Chang Ying from back then. Chang Lao glanced at him. Han Chujiu softly said, Brother, rest assured that Deming Ju will be fine. I divined his fortune in the past. He still has a long life. Chang Lao, how come I don't know when little Jiu learned divination? Han Chujiu shamelessly said, In this world, I am the only one who doesn't want to learn, but there is nothing that I, Han Chujiu, cannot learn. Chang Lao patted his forehead, then stepped forward and gently wiped the bronze mirror with his old hand. His voice was soft with infinite exhaustion and disappointment. Guang Juanshang cannot live. It was not easy to find Miss June and Little Master. If they die, Guang Juanshang will lose half of his life. Even if they are saved, I'm afraid he will only be a walking corpse without any happiness. Han Chujiu couldn't bear to see Chang Lao so sad. She racked her brains to comfort him. Suddenly, her body became light, and she felt dizzy. When she recovered, she was already back in the Medicine King Hall. Bang! Han Chujiu heavily punched the alchemy furnace beside him. His handsome and lovely face was distorted. Damn curse! Forcefully trapping him in this Medicine King Hall to death, all alone, powerless to do anything. How many more years was he going to be trapped? To the extent that he, a 7-foot man, became a baby in swaddling clothes? Han Chujiu took a deep breath and said while gritting her teeth, Don't be angry, don't be angry. If he died of anger, wouldn't that be fulfilling that bastard's wish? What's there to be angry about? Anyway, my precious disciple is about to arrive. She can grow the red spider lily and the yellow springs fruit. It would definitely be able to bring him out of this cold grave. Han Chujiu slowly closed her eyes and slammed her whole body on the low couch. Wait! Suddenly, he jumps up from the couch. Didn't Deming Ju say that he likes my precious disciple? Then who the hell is Miss June? Deming Ju, you fucking dare to play double dealing with me. Abandon me after you've started, treading on 2 boats. Han Chujiu gritted her teeth and kept walking around in the Medicine King Hall. The flames in her eyes almost spurted out. If Deming Ju was in front of him at this moment, he would not be able to help but tear him into pieces. Hee, a fickle big peacock, like he wants to marry my precious disciple. Dream on. The northernmost part of the floating island is the boundless Bohai Sea. But few people know, if you continue to go north along the Bohai Sea, what will you see? Chapter 3984. It's the edge of the floating island, or it's another vast continent. Even Lan Xiaozi and Lan Chushi, who created the floating island, don't know about this, because no one has ever reached the edge of the floating island. Even if it's a profound, immortal powerhouse, if they want to explore the edge of the floating island, they will fall into an endless flight. The mountains, deserts, and seas surrounding the floating island are so vast, so distant, that people will never be able to touch the end. The edge of the floating island, for most of the cultivators on the island, is an eternal mystery. But most of them obviously don't include Deming-ju. He doesn't even need to deliberately explore. He only needs to release his divine sense to know what the edge of the floating island is. It's a passageway with layers of spatial barriers. As long as you get close, you'll be confused by the folded space, thinking that you've been flying on the sea. But you won't realize that you've actually reached the edge of the island. These barriers wrap up the entire floating island, isolating it from the world and forming a protection, so that the people on the island won't fall from the edge because of some accident and eventually be torn apart by the space-time crack. This is the recognition and gift of the heavenly Tao to this refuge world created by Lan Xiaozi. Bystanders can't find such barriers, but Deming-ju's eyes can see them clearly. At this time, he's searching inch by inch along the barrier to the north of the Bohai Sea. Deming-ju's injuries are extremely serious. When he passed through the spatial barrier passage through the Chinquan mirror, he was torn apart by the space-time power. Right now, his whole body is burning hot, and even his thoughts have become chaotic and unclear. In the depths of his soul, there seems to be something struggling, clamoring to rush out. Deming-ju doesn't know how long he's been searching, whether from dawn to dusk or from dusk to dawn. His divine sense is clearly so powerful, covering every inch of the seabed and sea surface, but he hasn't found any trace. The remorse and pain in his heart deepens little by little as time goes by. Wherever his divine sense goes, even an ant can be detected, but he can't find any trace of Mu Yan. Does that mean that Mu Yan has already? Deming-ju doesn't dare to think of such an ending. Just when he's almost in despair, he finds an isolated island in the Bohai Sea. It was an extremely small and inconspicuous island. The surroundings were bare except for a sparse patch of iron leaf wood in the center of the island. Iron leaf wood was a very common spirit plant on the floating island and the cultivation continent. Other than being hard, it didn't have any other effect. Previously, Deming-ju's divine sense had swept over this place several times, but he hadn't detected anything unusual, so he had swept past. But when he swept his gaze over the island again, his movements paused. There were a few sea beasts lying on the sand and rocks around the small island. This was a very common thing. Sea beasts would naturally choose to rest on small islands. However, the strange thing was that there were simply too many sea beasts on this island. Moreover, every single one of them was of an extremely high level, and their bodies were emitting powerful spiritual fluctuations. It seemed to be coveting something. But on a small, isolated island, there was only the iron leaf wood, an ordinary spirit plant that didn't bear fruit. What could the sea beast covet? Deming-ju withdrew his thoughts, and the divine power within his body surged. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived on the isolated island. The roaring sea beasts surrounding the iron fir forest feel Deming-ju's aura. He was immediately frightened into silence. Chapter 3985. Each and every one of them has a horrified expression in their eyes. Deming-ju doesn't pay attention to them, and instead quickly enters the ironwood forest. Almost as soon as he enters the forest, an aura that was originally shielded by some kind of energy is reflected in his mind along with his divine sense. Deming-ju raises his hand and firmly clasps the ironwood branch. He clenches his teeth, trying his best to control himself so that his godhead doesn't collapse due to the violent fluctuations of emotions. In the sparse ironwood forest, several sea beasts have already drilled in, surrounding an open space in the middle of the forest. They bare their sharp fangs, their huge vertical pupils revealing a greedy and longing light as they slowly approach the open space. Drool drips all over the ground, and in the center of the open space, there's a little boy holding a sword. His small body is covered in blood, his clothes are tattered, and there's a half-conscious rabbit lying at his feet. When the sea beast approached, he was already so tired that he couldn't even lift the sword in his hand. When he sheds the sword, he has to rely on the body of the sword to barely stand. But that little back is still perfectly straight. That pair of icy blue eyes are so young and tender, but they're filled with reckless determination and madness. Because he can't retreat. Behind him lies a woman with a cold body. Her eyes are closed, and her chest isn't moving up and down as if she's dead. That's his mother. If he retreats, his mother will be eaten by these sea beasts. Deming-ju takes a step forward, and the pressure of an immortal emperor is suddenly released. The sea beasts coveting the delicious food don't even have time to make a sound before they're torn to pieces, turning into a bloody mist that dissipates into the air. Deming-ju walks towards that little figure. But as soon as he takes a step closer, a sharp and cold sword light whistles over. He doesn't dodge and lets the blade cut him. Once and then again, one sword and then another. It's clearly the flesh that's hurt, but the real pain is in his heart. It's like it's going to explode, making his vision blur. Finally, Deming-ju walks in front of the little boy and reaches out to hold him in his arms. That little figure is still desperately struggling. His icy blue eyes are bloodshot and tyrannical, but they're almost unfocused. He's already reached his limit. Only the willpower to protect his mother is supporting him. Xiaobao, it's all right. Daddy is here. Xiaobao, you've done well. Mother will be fine. Let Daddy save her, okay? The violent struggle in his arms gradually came to a stop. The pair of ice blue eyes that had lost focus gradually reflected his figure. His chapped lips opened and closed slightly, but what came out was a voice so hoarse that it could break one's heart. Father. Deming-ju only feels a hand clenching his heart, making him almost unable to breathe. It's Daddy. As soon as the words left his mouth, he realized how choked they were. Xiaobao, Daddy's here. Tears slowly gathered in her icy blue eyes and silently rolled down her cheeks drop by drop. Why? Why did you only come now? A child's voice was supposed to be childish, crisp, and carefree. However, Little Treasure's voice was so hoarse that it made one's heart feel like it was about to be crushed. I've been calling Daddy. I've been calling Daddy to save Mother. Save Martial Uncle. Why didn't you appear? Daddy is bad. I hate Daddy. Mother has lost so much blood. Martial Uncle and Martial Uncle, as well as Martial Granduncle, they're all dead. Xiaobao couldn't do anything and could only pray to heaven to let Daddy come faster. But Daddy didn't come. Why? Chapter 3986. Why haven't you come? Why can't you hear Xiaobao's voice? Didn't you say that you would always be by Xiaobao and Mother's side? As he finished speaking, little Bao was unable to support himself any longer, and his little body trembled violently. Tears rolled down her cheeks like a broken dam. The heart-wrenching cries were heart-wrenching. Deming-ju only feels that his heart aches so much that he's almost unable to breathe. He fiercely hugs the little body that's silently weeping and trembling in his arms. I'm sorry. It's Daddy's fault. Daddy came late. I'm sorry. Xiaobao opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Suddenly, he felt a warm liquid dripping onto his neck. Her father's body was so hot that he didn't even have an outer robe on him. He was only wearing a blood-stained inner robe. He suddenly realized something. Daddy was injured. It's not that Father doesn't want to come and save Nyangqin. He must have been held up by something. Also, such a powerful and lofty father had cried, crying and apologizing to him. Xiaobao tightens her grip on Deming-ju's sleeve, burying her whole body in his embrace. Choking with sobs, she said, Father, Mother didn't die, right? Mother, Martial Uncles and Martial Uncles won't die, right? Deming-ju doesn't know what happened to Mayan and the others. But at this moment, the cause and effect were no longer important to him. He nodded without hesitation. Yes, Father will definitely save Mother. Even if he has to risk his life, even if he has to go against the heavens, he must let Mayan survive. Listening to the man's firm words, Xiaobao's heart finally relaxed. His consciousness began to blur, and his eyelids gradually became heavy. But his little hand is still clutching Di Ming Ju's lapel, and he says in a low voice, "Xiao Bao is so scared, but Daddy is here, so I'm not afraid." Di Ming Ju kisses Xiao Bao on the forehead and cautiously sends him and the fat rabbit into the small world. Xiao Bao's injuries were all superficial wounds. Moreover, he had a celestial physique, so he only needed to rest in a place with sufficient celestial qi for a period of time, and he would be able to recover on his own. Now that he had fainted, the most important thing was that his body and mind were heavily injured. He had also fought with the sea beast for a few days and nights, and his celestial energy was overdrawn. The small world was tailor-made by Di Ming Ju for Xiao Bao. There was plenty of immortal qi inside, and there was no danger. Most importantly, even if his godhead collapsed and his soul perished, this small world that he had separated would still be safe and sound. Moreover, this small world was originally sealed off, and outsiders were unable to enter or detect it. But so long as little Bao attained the peak of the mysterious immortal realm, then he would be able to open it up by himself and wait for the arrival of his heavenly tribulation to advance into the immortal king realm. This small world can be said to be the last thing that Di Ming Ju has left for Xiao Bao. After sending Xiao Bao away, Di Ming Ju steps forward and picks mine up. The coldness and lack of vitality in his hand caused a buzzing sound to ring in his mind. His blood and energy surged, and his godhead collapsed to the ground. Di Ming Ju takes a deep breath, clasps Mayan's hand, and tentatively sends a bit of divine essence into her body. He sensed that the divine essence he sent was being absorbed by Mayan's body. Di Ming Ju's spirit shakes, and without the slightest hesitation, he instills the spiritual energy that supports his cultivation and life into that ice-cold and thin body. As time goes by, Muyan's cold body begins to warm up. There was still no pulse or heartbeat in his body, but there was a faint flow of spiritual power in his meridians and dantian. Di Ming Ju, on the other hand, fiercely vomits out a large mouthful of blood because he has consumed a large amount of his divine essence. Chapter 39:87. His injuries were extremely serious, and his godhead was forcibly suppressed by the medicine king, Han Chujio, using various heavenly treasures. At this time, his divine essence was greatly consumed, and his godhead began to collapse again. Once it collapsed, it would be beyond redemption. But he couldn't care about anything else. Although Mu Yan's condition has improved, there's still no heartbeat, and even her divine soul has been torn apart. Di Ming Ju doesn't understand medicine, so he doesn't know how to treat such a near-death injury. All he can do is exchange his life and lifespan for her. If he doesn't have enough divine essence, then he will also block his 3 souls and 7 spirits. The only woman he deeply loves in this life. He already owes his yin-yin so much. How can he just watch her die in front of him? Di Ming Ju wipes the blood from the corner of his mouth and lowers his head to lightly kiss Mu Yan's cold and soft lips. Then he grabs her wrist again and injects his divine essence. Guji. Just then, a furry head bursts out from Mu Yan's waist. Its big round eyes look at Di Ming Ju, then it spreads its little wings and lets out a cheerful cry. Daddy! As it cries, it flaps its wings excitedly and pounces towards his face. Di Ming Ju has to stop the infusion of divine essence and grabs its hind legs, pulling it down from his body. The little chick grumbles in dissatisfaction and tilts its head. Why doesn't Daddy play kiss, hug, and raise Huang Wang high? His line of sight turns, and he sees Mu Yin lying on the ground. His big eyes suddenly brighten, and he reveals an expression of sudden realization. Guji. Woof, woof, woof. I know, Mommy is sleeping, so Daddy also wants to sleep with Mommy, right? Good, good. Huang Wang also wants to sleep. Daddy, let's sleep together. Di Ming Ju is the only 2 people in this world who can completely understand the little chick's language. For a moment, he's dizzy from the little guy's series of sleep. Even that tragic and painful feeling just now seems to have lightened a lot. Only this little guy can be so naive and happy at any time, right? Deming Ju throws the little chick aside and grabs Mu Yan's hand again. He is about to inject his divine essence. Suddenly, he feels that his eyelids are getting heavier, and there seems to be a voice in his head saying, "Sleep, sleep, and you could get everything you want." Damn it. How could he sleep at a time like this? How could he not be able to control himself and want to sleep? Just because Huang Wang said it wanted to sleep with its parents? Was there really such an evil creature in this world? In the end, Deming Ju still can't resist the heavy drowsiness. He collapses beside Mayan and closes his eyes. The last thing he remembered was little Chick happily squeezing between his parents, pulling out a piece of floral cloth to make a blanket for himself before closing his eyes. There seemed to be a melodious song coming from the distant horizon. Life was like a dream. The long and ancient time turned to nothing in an instant. There was love in life, and this hatred had nothing to do with the moon or the wind. Holding hands and waiting for 1,000 years in vain. Life after life, the wrong marriage. My lord, are you really going to spend so much money to buy the child in that bitch's womb? Don't tell me that you're going to go back on your word after we dig the child out. The whistling wind brushed past his ears, accompanied by hushed whispers. Deming Ju slowly opens his eyes. What he saw was a middle-aged woman with a greedy expression. She was bowing to a man in black. Chapter 3988. This is the deposit. As long as you do things properly, there will naturally be benefits for you. Remember to cut off her entire womb palace and give it to me. The child in her belly must not be harmed in the slightest. Don't worry, Darren. We absolutely guarantee to deliver the fresh and living child to Darren's hands. Hee, we've heard that a 7-month-old baby still wrapped in a placenta is the most nourishing thing for a woman. The conversation between the two people trickles into Deming Ju's ears. It sobers up his somewhat muddled consciousness. What is this place? The spiritual energy has dried up, and the air of desolation is overflowing. The two people in front of him don't even have half a spiritual root. This is the Yinwu continent, and the two people in front of him are talking about buying and selling the baby in a woman's belly. Why is he here? Muyin is seriously injured and her life is hanging by a thread. How can he waste time in a place like this? Deming Ju is about to surge his divine power and tear the space to go back. But he suddenly finds something wrong. He can't use his divine power. Even though he's standing next to the two people talking, they don't notice his existence at all. Deming Ju is startled and reaches out to brush the trees on the side. But his hand passes through them. He's not a real entity. Gujiji. A familiar voice comes to his ears. Immediately after, a fluffy yellow dumpling jumps onto his shoulder and gives him a silly smile. Daddy, Daddy, Huang Wang found you. Deming Ju snaps. What's going on? Where did you take Ben Jun? What do you want to do? The little chick blinks, then starts chattering nonsense again. But Deming Ju understands. You're saying this is Mu Yan's dream? The little chick tilts its head, somewhat hesitant. Probably yes. Huang Wang doesn't understand. Huang doesn't know. It was Daddy who said he wanted to sleep with Mommy. Huang Wang didn't cause any trouble. It sheepishly says as it flaps its little wings. Deming Ju doesn't get angry, but instead falls into contemplation. He heard Mu Yin say that the little chick has an extraordinary origin and may be the young master of Wushang Palace. And it has too many secrets. It seems to be born with good luck. Mine had been on the brink of death several times, thinking that she was going to die, but the little chick had saved her by accident. Would it be the same this time? Mu Yan's dantian and meridians can already operate, but her soul is split into pieces. Did the little chick accidentally send him here? Is it because Mu Yan's broken soul is here? Divine essence could maintain the vitality of Mu Yan's body, but it couldn't condense her divine soul and let her come back to life. And the key to Mu Yan's survival lies here. Deming Ju slowly steadies his mind and begins to use his divine sense to explore the surroundings. Yes, he could not use his divine power, and his body could not touch the physical objects around him, but his consciousness still existed. However, the amount of divine sense he could use was very little, and he could only detect the general situation within a few miles. Is this Mu Yan's dream? It seemed like it, but it also seemed like it wasn't. Although the ability to enter one's dream was rare, it wasn't as if no one in the Xioshan continent had ever cultivated it. However, the scene he saw in the dream was blurry, dreamy, and unstable. It would definitely not be as stable as the scene in front of him. Moreover, when entering a dream, one could use immortal energy but not divine sense, because a person's dream did not have a physical body. Therefore, this is not Mu Yan's dream. Chapter 3989. Therefore, this isn't Mu Yan's dream. Rather, it's the great illusionary land. This is the dreamlike, small world that Mu Yan has created. Diming Ju doesn't have the time to marvel at Mu Yan's ability to create such a fake world with her cultivation. At this moment, he's more concerned about what is hidden in this small world. Where's Mu Yan's soul? His divine sense sweeps through the row of houses behind the woman, finally stopping at a dilapidated house. There's the breath of a young woman there. No, not just one, but two. But the other one is very small and weak, attached to the woman. That's a fetus. Diming Ju doesn't know why his heart sinks, and he subconsciously wants to check on a young pregnant woman's situation. That greedy woman has just received the gold coins, and she turned around to walk inside the house. As she walks, she shouts, "Have you prepared the scissors in the food box? What are you dilly-dallying for? Don't you know that the noble person is in a hurry to get the goods? If you delay any longer, that little slut will wake up." Soon, several figures rush out of the kitchen, heading towards the dilapidated house. Mother, rest assured. So what if she wakes up? That little slut's hands and feet are tied by us, and she doesn't have any cultivation. How could she escape from our palms? I really didn't expect that the fetus in that little slut's belly could be sold for such a high price. Mother, do you think we should find a few more men for that little slut, raise a few more children? When the time comes, we won't have anything we want. They all laugh excitedly. While discussing this cruel matter, they excitedly and eagerly push open the door of the dilapidated house, without the slightest bit of guilt or fear on their faces. When the door is pushed open, Diming Ju finally sees the scene inside the house. With just one glance, his eyes suddenly turn crimson red. The anger in his chest almost burns away all of his reason. Even the entire great illusionary land can't bear his anger and begins to tremble and collapse. G. The little chick is so scared that it hides in Diming Ju's arms. Father, save me. Mother, save me. It's going to collapse. I can't sleep. The yellow-colored demonic voice pierces his ears, making Diming Ju's almost shattered reason slowly return. He clenched his fists tightly, closed his eyes, and told himself over and over again that he could not lose control. Only then did he manage to suppress his surging anger. This is the great illusionary land created by Mayan. It's fake. He must not destroy this small world. Otherwise, Mu Yan would really be beyond saving. However, every time he looked at the scene in front of him, his eyes would turn bloodshot, and he would almost lose control of himself. In a messy, run-down house, the thin and frail girl's abdomen bulged out. Her thin arms and legs were tied tightly to the bedpost. That girl is Mayan. It was Mu Yan who was carrying Xiao Bao, so fragile, so young, so helpless. The few people who entered the door approached her with greedy and cruel faces. They took out scissors and cut open her clothes. The girl suddenly came to her senses. Seeing this scene, a terrified expression appeared on his face. She cried and begged. She struggled with all her might, but she could only watch helplessly as these people used knives to cut open her stomach. The intense pain caused her to faint again and again, only to wake up again and again. From begging and crying at the beginning to despair and resentment. She looks at everyone in front of her with eyes full of hatred, and there's a bone-piercing, killing intent in them. The woman meets her eyes and immediately yells, "Little slut, what are you looking at? You've done something shameful, and you still have the face to glare at me." Chapter 3990. Shameless thing, having an illicit relationship at such a young age and even getting pregnant. You've completely lost the face of our Sioux family. Right now, I'm helping you get rid of this evil creature in your stomach so that you can marry again in the future. That's for your own good. It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful, but you actually dare to glare at me. He really is an ungrateful wretch. The moment the fetus was cut out, everything in front of him was covered in blood red. The world spun and the stars moved. The scenes in front of him changed rapidly. Time seemed to flow at its fastest speed, but it was still enough for people to clearly see everything that had happened in that short 10 years. The helpless girl was spurned, schemed against, and hurt because she got pregnant out of wedlock. The baby in her womb had been dug out, and this filled her with hatred. However, he couldn't help but feel grateful to the woman who saved him from the fire pit and helped him take revenge. However, she did not know that the woman who saved her was the culprit who murdered her. She had been schemed against again and again, sent to Wan Rin Ku, and used as a stepping stone. He was so young, but he had tasted all the suffering in the world. But in the end, the only thing that remained of his sincerity was deceived and used. She knew the truth in despair. She knew that the woman she treated as her best friend was actually the murderer who killed the child in her womb. The only reason for all this was that the child she was carrying was a fairy body. As long as he refined the child into a pill, he would be able to ascend and become an immortal. In the midst of endless despair, she chose to self-destruct. Fresh blood dyed the entire great illusionary land red. It was her blood, her tears. It was a grievance she couldn't erase from her previous life, no matter how glorious and confident she was in this life. G. Batty, batty, batty. I'll kill the bastard who bullied my mother. The little chick was so angry that it flapped its wings and danced about madly. It wanted nothing more than to slice Gong Qianxue and the others into pieces. It's just a pity that it's the same as Di Ming Ju, only a passerby in this great illusionary land. It's a shadow without a physical body. Therefore, after fighting for a long time, he was so tired that he was gasping for breath, but there was nothing he could do. At this moment, everything in the great illusionary land had returned to the beginning. It was still the greedy woman and the man in black who were discussing selling the fetus. There was also the young girl who was tied up in the rundown house, experiencing heart-wrenching pain and despair over and over again. This was an endless cycle of reincarnation, a nightmare that could not see the light of day. And Mu Yan's 3 souls and 7 spirits were currently sinking into this nightmare, repeatedly tossing and turning, wasting time until her soul flew away and scattered. Little Ing Hoa is tired from fighting, so he throws himself at Di Ming Ju's feet, wanting to seek comfort from his father. However, just as she rushes under Di Ming Ju, she feels something dripping on her body. The little chick raised its head and let out a low cry. "Dad, are your eyes watery? Daddy, are you crying?" Di Ming Ju slowly crouches down. He seemed to want to reach out and stroke the little chick. However, he curled up as if he was in extreme pain. It hurts. It was really painful. It was as if his heart was about to explode. What did he see? What exactly is this great illusionary land? Was it real? Or just a dream? If it was real, if all these were Mayan's memories, then what did he do to Mayan, to Xiao Bao? In the 7 years that he didn't know, in the 7 years that he forgot everything, in the 7 years that he was the emperor of the polar domain, the woman that he loved the most, his only child, what did she experience? Chapter 3991. In the land of the cursed god, Mu Yan's intrusion saved his life. In his delirium, he forced Yin Yin to bear his child at such a young age. That child had a celestial spiritual body, which made all the evil people in the world greedy. Thus, Mu Yan's nightmare began. And he, Ming-ju, is the main culprit behind all of this. Goo-goo. Little Inghua lets out a low cry, nudging Ming-ju with his little head, his big eyes filled with worry. Dad, what's wrong with you? Is it very painful? Huang Wang will blow it for you, okay? Daddy, don't cry. Mommy and Big Brother will be sad if you cry. Ming-ju can't bear it any longer. He covers his face with both hands, tears pouring down like a broken dam. Yin, how can I redeem my sins? What can I do to make up for all the hurt you've suffered all these years? Yin, how can I say I'm sorry again? And I love you. G. The little chick is anxiously circling around the Ming-ju. Why does Daddy keep crying? Are you really sad? However, he thought that only Huang and his brother would cry. It turns out that Daddy can also cry shamefully. As the little chick is at its wit's end, it sees Ming-ju slowly getting up. G. Daddy, are you done crying? Are we going out? Sleeping isn't fun. Let's go out and find Mom and Brother, okay? Ming-ju grabs it in his hand and presses his palm on its forehead. A pale blue light shrouds the top of the little chick's head. Huang, thank you. Thank you for showing me all this. Thank you for letting me know just how much I owe Mu Yin and Xiaobao. It's so much that I might not be able to repay it all in my lifetime. The man's hoarse voice was accompanied by a cool and refreshing aura that enveloped his body, causing Huang to close its eyes comfortably. The entire chicken felt drowsy. However, Little Chick still felt that something was wrong. It shook its little head, trying desperately to wake up. However, the power was too gentle and comfortable. The little chick couldn't resist it anymore and fell asleep. Then, its figure began to slowly fade and dissipate into the air. In a great illusionary land, one could not use divine power, spiritual power, or immortal power. Ming-ju is also unable to condense a solid body, unable to have any effect on everything around it, just like what had happened in the previous cycle. Even if they were driven mad by hatred and pain, they could only watch from the sidelines, unable to interfere. But this time, Ming-ju slowly walks over to the girl tied to the crude wooden bed. He reached out and held her in his arms. Divine power surged, and the fragile hemp rope broke. He easily picked up the girl. A look of panic appeared on the girl's face. Who are you? What do you want to do? The panicked voices stopped abruptly. Ming-ju tightly presses that thin and cold body into his arms, hoarsely saying, Yin, don't be afraid. I'll take you home. The girl in his arms opened her mouth. Who are you? I don't know you. She wants to struggle, but Ming-ju hugs her tightly, so tightly that he practically kneads her into his own flesh and blood. He didn't say anything. He just repeated over and over, Yin, don't be afraid. I'll take you home. His hoarse voice echoed in the girl's ears. A faint blue ball of light, like a star, bursts out from Ming-ju's body, drilling into the girl's body. You. The girl's eyes widen in shock, seemingly wanting to say something. Chapter 30-992. But very quickly, everything in front of her starts to spin. That's the Big Dipper changing, the sea turning into mulberry fields. The appearance of the thin and weak girl with a big belly gradually begins to change. Her sallow skin became sparkling and translucent. Her timid and flustered eyes were now overflowing with radiance and color. The dry and messy long hair turns into fine black hair, flowing in the air. Her pupils were originally unfocused, pitch black without a bit of light. Now, they gradually reflect the man's shadow. Ming-ju. She calls out her lover's name in a low, hoarse voice. The man opposite her smiles gently at her. That smile is indescribably gentle and penetrating, with an indescribable lingering affection. His slender hand lifts up, gently caressing her face. He says, Yin, don't be afraid. I'll take you home. In that instant, Mu Yan's heart is unreasonably soft and unreasonably sweet. She wants to say that she has never been afraid, not because she doesn't fear death, but because she has always believed that Ming-ju will not abandon her. So even if she faces a venerable immortal like Lu Xingyuan, she still believes that she still has a way out. That's because she made a promise to this man to stay by his side for a lifetime. This promise hasn't been fulfilled yet. How could she be willing to die? Mu Yan's mouth hooks up into a shallow smile, softly saying, "All right, I'm not afraid." Her voice hasn't fallen when her complexion suddenly changes. Di Mingju. She suddenly reaches out and grabs the man's arm, her divine sense probing his body. She's scared witless. Di Mingju, what did you do? Why is your soul broken like this? You. Before she can finish speaking, she's already tightly embraced by the man. Yin Yin, let me hold you a little longer. As the two embrace, more blue starlight flows from Di Mingju into Mu Yan's body. Mu Yan's pupils suddenly contract. You're using your soul to mend my soul? Di Mingju, are you crazy? With my spirit, I'll ferry your soul. With my spirit, I'll nourish your vitality. With my life, I'll exchange your life. Mu Yan only feels a loud bang in her head, and in a split second, she almost loses all her senses. When she came back to her senses, she hurriedly struggled with all her might, wanting to break free from his embrace, but she was held tighter and tighter. The man hugged her as if he was hugging the most important treasure. He was afraid that if he let go, he would lose it. Yin Yin, how can I leave you behind? How could I have abandoned you back then? Hot tears fell on her neck, so hot that even her heart trembled. Mu Yin stares blankly, only feeling that even her own soul is aching. She opened her mouth to say something. His slender hands covered her eyes, and a cold blue light shrouded her. Her consciousness gradually became hazy. Vaguely, she felt the man's cold lips on her own. Yin Yin, you must live well. I love you, till death do me part. Di Mingju. What do you want to do? Mu Yan desperately wants to open her eyes and question the man. However, the cold and gentle blue light completely enveloped her soul, slowly stealing away her consciousness. At the same time, countless blue starlight surged into her soul form. Bit by bit, it mends her broken soul. Mu Yan can feel that her 3 souls and 7 spirits, which were originally riddled with holes, are starting to solidify. She once again sensed the existence of her body, sensed the space of the Tian Mo Chin, and the corpses of her fellow apprentices in the book tower. Chapter 3993. She was healing. She finally had a slim chance of survival. He was able to use the nirvana of stars to revive his fellow disciples. But the price of this slim chance of survival is Di Mingju's life. How can she trade Di Mingju's life for her own? If she could open her eyes at this moment and see that stupid man, she would definitely give him a tight slap. Di Mingju, how could you think that without you, Jun Mayan could still live alone in this world? Why do you think that living a life worse than death is better than dying? Di Mingju, do you still remember that we said that we would stay together for a long time, that we would look at the scenery of the 4 seasons together? Do you still remember that you promised to give me and Xiao Bao a happy home? If you die, how will the family be called home? How can we be happy? She would not allow it. Absolutely not. No one could take away her husband, her Di Mingju. Not even the heavenly Tao or fate. She was a shunned musician. She was a shunned musician who could defy the heavens and change fate, who could bring the dead back to life, who could snatch a life from the hands of the king of hell, and who could struggle against the heavens for survival. Boom! The lone island crumbled, and the sea surged, sweeping up huge waves that reached the sky. The impassioned sound of the zither was accompanied by specks of blue light, diffusing between heaven and earth. A silver moon, a blazing sun, they rose into the sky one after the other. 9 stars slowly revolved around them, shining brilliantly. They dyed the sky, as well as illuminating the entire mountain and river. Southeast of the floating island, with Xiaoyao City as the center, Han Yi and the other 3 are looking for news of Di Mingju over and over again. However, the result was disappointing. Not to mention Di Mingju and Jun Mayan, they can't even find traces of the other 6 people of the Xiaoyao school. Even the people of Liberty City only knew that the 7 carefree sons had gone to train themselves, but they did not know their exact whereabouts. Originally, Wei Mian had a communication talisman to contact Mu Yin and Luo Yu. But when he burned the communication talisman, there was no response from the other side. Wei Mian's heart is also burning with impatience. He sends out 100,000 Xiao Yao army members to help Han Yi and the others search. However, several days and nights passed. The entire floating island was almost turned upside down, but nothing was found. Ending the communication with Star Wolf, Han Yi wants to release his divine sense. However, he only felt that his sea of consciousness was dry and painful. His face paled a little. A porcelain bottle was passed to him from the side, and Ingmei's slightly hoarse voice came into his ears. "Drink some jasper, due to regulate your breathing." She originally wanted to say that if he overdrew his divine sense like this, his sea of consciousness might be damaged. But when he felt a burning pain in his dantian, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Han Yi takes the porcelain bottle and drinks the jasper dew inside in one gulp. When he handed the bottle back, his fingers trembled and the porcelain bottle fell to the ground. Han Yi promptly crouches down to pick it up, but the bottle rolls several meters away. He wanted to use his celestial power to grab the bottle back, but he found that his hand was shaking very badly. Once the immortal power was activated, the fragile porcelain bottle suddenly shattered. Han Yi suddenly punches the ground, the rims of his eyes reddening. "Little shadow, nothing will happen to Jun Shang and Miss June, right?" Ingmei slowly squatted down and held his head in her arms. Her voice was unprecedentedly gentle. "It'll be fine. It'll definitely be fine." Han Yi firmly nods. Jun Shang was the only immortal emperor after the end of the Ancient War. Miss June is the successor of the Shen musicians. Their fate is so special and rich. How could... Chapter 3994. The last death word. He can't say it no matter what. Ingmei's heart surges with endless sorrow. She wants to say some comforting words, but she can't say them. That's because her fear and uneasiness at the moment is no less than Han Ye's. Her calmness is nothing more than a forced calmness. And this is the moment when the vision of heaven and earth happens. The two of them stand up abruptly, their eyes unblinkingly looking at the blazing sun and silver moon rising in the sky. The originally dim and obscure eyes are lit up little by the dazzling brilliance. The glorious sun swallows the sky. 9 stars connect to the moon. It's Jun Shang and Miss June, they're not dead. Ingmei, they're not dead. That energy fluctuation is coming from the north. Let's go find them. Han Yi is about to rush out as he speaks, but Ingmei grabs his collar and pulls him back. At the same time, Ingmei has already thrown out a flying boat, taking Han Yi and jumping on it. When the two of them are standing still, she takes out another bottle of jasper dew and drinks it. She sits down cross-legged, looking at Han Yi with disdain. "Your knowledge sea is exhausted. Your immortal power is dried up. What can you do by rushing to Jun Shang's side? Drag Jun Shang down." Han Yi comes back to his senses. He chuckles and promptly sits down cross-legged as well, beginning to adjust his breathing and absorb the immortal power in the jasper dew. The floating island, the shore of the Bohai Sea. 2 streaks of light come speeding from the east and west, eventually landing on the beach. Star Wolf, Ingmei, and Han Yi arrive almost at the same time, and defeating armies is even faster than them. Star Wolf cuts a sorry figure as he falls down from the flying sword, his complexion deathly pale, his appearance weathered by the vicissitudes of life. He doesn't even have time to steady himself before rushing over to ask defeating armies, "Where's Jun Shang?" Defeating armies slowly shakes his head, his expression grave. "The energy fluctuation stopped after I arrived here." At this time, the rising sun and the silver moon have long disappeared without a trace. "I didn't find Jun Shang, and I didn't see Miss June. How could this be?" Star Wolf angrily says, "That's the glorious sun swallows the sky. It must be Miss June and Jun Shang." Defeating armies takes a deep breath and says, "I know, 9 stars connect to the moon. Glorious sun swallows the sky. It must be Miss June and Junshang. I arrived here a few hours ago and checked the surroundings, including the deep sea. There are indeed no signs of living people. The expressions of the Star Wolf trio changed drastically, their minds on the verge of collapsing. However, defeating armies continued, but there's something very strange. I sensed energy fluctuations from the opening of a spatial barrier passage nearby. And not just 1 or 2, but a total of 8? What does this mean? Han Ye's eyes brightened. You're saying that Junshang and Miss June passed through the space barrier and left the floating island? But why are there 8 energy fluctuations? 8 energy fluctuations represented 8 different spatial barriers, 8 different entrances and exits. What was going on? Is Junshang safe or not? While the 4 of them were bewildered, the jade slip on defeating armies' waist lit up. Soon, Elder Chang's excited voice came from inside. Junshang has returned. He's in the numinous sky hall right now. The 4 of you return quickly. In just half an hour, the beach on the shore of the Bohai Sea was restored to its calm state. Only the layers of waves curled up from time to time, rolling and crashing onto the shore. The rhythmic sound of the waves appears peaceful and serene. It's as if the previous bloody battle, the previous hatred, the previous love, hate, anger, and foolishness, all of it didn't happen. In the distant horizon, there seems to be the low cries of beasts and the melodious sounds of a zither, lingering and reverberating. That's a long farewell. That's a moving parting. That's the departure of a new road. Chapter 3995. At the southeast border of the Xiaoxin continent, blood stained the originally verdant and green fields. Creepy roars could be heard from time to time. In the cracks of the rocks in the distance, dozens of figures were shivering, their eyes full of fear. However, just when they were in despair, a golden light fell from the sky, covering the dark land. Unique Sanskrit gathered into a complicated flower table, crisscrossing in the void. With a loud bang, the Sanskrit exploded, and the golden light turned into a cold sword energy, instantly cutting the whole field. The horrible roars and shrill screams stopped abruptly. Seeing this scene, the people in the cracks of the rocks all widened their eyes, revealing ecstatic expressions. That's the Buddha's light of purification. We're saved, ha ha ha. Some people cried, some people laughed. As the golden light turned into sword energy, it killed all the monsters. The golden Buddha's light swept across the field like a gentle breeze, purifying the whole land. In just a moment, the place that was like a bloody hell was restored to green and full of vitality. When the golden light dissipated, a figure in a golden-red kasaya appeared. The people hiding in the cracks of the rocks hurriedly rushed out. Master, fortunately you're here. Thank you for saving our lives, Master. When the people who rushed to the front saw his face clearly, their footsteps stopped, and their excited voices also gradually stopped. It was really the Master in front of them. He was a monk, but he was too young. Moreover, he had delicate features, red lips, and white teeth. When he saw so many people rushing over, he even took a step back shyly. No matter how one looked at him, he did not look like an enlightened monk. Instead, he looked like a handsome young man who came from a noble family and was ignorant of worldly affairs. The people looked at each other, wondering if they had seen wrongly. But there were no other monks around. After calming himself down, an old man walked out of the group and bowed deeply to the little monk. We are the clansmen of the Si-Ching tribe. Today, we accidentally encountered the corpse puppet when we went out. Thanks to Master's help, we survived. May I ask the origin of Master's Buddha name? If there is a chance in the future, the Si-Ching tribe will do our best to repay you. Back then, when the heavens collapsed, the sky pillars collapsed, and the nightmare ghosts wreaked havoc. Countless humans and spirit beasts on the ground were bitten by the poltergeist ghosts. They were poisoned by the poltergeist ghosts, and there was no time to treat them. In the end, these beasts didn't die, but they turned into monsters similar to the poltergeist. This was a corpse puppet. They were not as strong as the poltergeist ghosts, and their intelligence was even lower than the weakest poltergeist ghosts. Their numbers were countless times that of the poltergeists. Moreover, these corpse puppets had some of the same characteristics as ghouls. Undying and indestructible, his entire body filled with poison, unless a special method or divine power was used to incinerate it completely. Otherwise, even if it was blown to smithereens, it would regenerate after a period of time. If there weren't many corpse puppets, ordinary immortals would be able to deal with them easily. However, once the corpse puppets formed a group, they would become an incomparably terrifying existence. You've just gotten rid of more than half of the corpse puppets, and the corpse puppets that were killed before will resurrect. Life and death, endless and unending. It was like a nightmare, and there was no end to them. The people of this Si-Ching tribe were unlucky enough to encounter a large group of corpse puppets on this plane. More than half of the original group of more than 100 people were devoured by the corpse puppets. These dead people became the source of power for the corpse puppets. This also caused the number of corpse puppets to increase rapidly. Chapter 3996. In the end, they could only hide in the crevices of the rocks and guard the entrance with all their might to prolong their existence. But their immortal power would be exhausted and their spirits would collapse. At that time, they would have no choice but to become the food of the corpse puppet. Just when the people of the Si-Ching tribe were about to despair, the golden Buddhist light shrouded them and brought them a chance of survival. This made them feel infinitely grateful to the person in front of them, and they wished they could marry him to repay his kindness. The little monk put his palms together and was about to say Ba. Suddenly, he thought of something and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. He said in a low voice, "It's nothing. Don't worry about it." The little monk thought with a slightly red face. He planned to confess to his master that his sin in the mortal world had not been severed, and he wanted to return to secular life. Then he shouldn't use the name of Defying Temple anymore, and he shouldn't call himself a little monk anymore. He wanted to slowly get used to being an ordinary man again. The people of the Si-Ching tribe didn't dare to ask any more questions since they couldn't find out the little monk's origin. They just said their gratitude over and over again. A few young and pretty girls in the crowd looked at the little monk's handsome face, their faces filled with bashfulness. The little monk listened to their words of gratitude with a smile. Then he said in a warm voice, "If you really want to thank me, I want to ask you about the whereabouts of a person." He took out a picture scroll and slowly unfolded it. "This person is my second senior brother. I have been looking for him all these years. May I ask if you have seen him? Even if it's just some information about him, I'll be very grateful if you can tell me." The people of the Si-Ching tribe stared at the lifelike picture scroll for a long time. Then they shook their heads one by one. Although he was already mentally prepared, the little monk still couldn't help but feel disappointed. Previously, he had sensed the fluctuation of the divine power of his second senior brother from a very far place. So he excitedly rushed to the southeast area to look for him. However, during this period of time, he had asked almost everyone in this area, but no one could give him any clues about his second senior brother. The little monk was about to put away the picture scroll, but he heard a little girl frowning and whispering, "This person seems a little familiar. I seem to have seen him somewhere." "Really?" The little monk's eyes lit up. The little girl said hesitantly, "I'm not sure if what I saw was the person in the painting, because the man had long hair and was dressed as a Taoist. Because of the existence of Defying Temple, Buddhism flourished while Taoism declined. Usually, once one joined Buddhism, it was impossible for them to switch to Taoism. Therefore, although the little girl found him familiar at first glance, she hesitated and did not say it out loud. Hearing this, Jing Yuan was stunned, but he still said excitedly, "It's all right. It doesn't matter even if I'm mistaken. Where did you meet this person?" The little girl seemed to be recalling something, and a pained expression appeared on her face. "That was many years ago. My father was seriously injured and was about to die. I heard that there was an omnipotent immortal on Mo Mountain. I wanted to ask the immortal to save my father, so I kept climbing up. The little girl's cultivation level was very low. She was only at the 5th or 6th level of the Hollow Immortal stage. The Ink Mountain in the Netherworld towered into the clouds and was covered with air barriers all year round, making it impossible to fly on a sword. It was obviously very painful and difficult for the little girl to climb up. I don't know how long I've been climbing. My hands and feet hurt so much that I couldn't hold on any longer and fell down. Chapter 3997. I thought I was going to die, but someone grabbed my collar and put me on a big rock. The little girl shows a grateful expression. At that time, I was so tired and sleepy that I couldn't open my eyes. I only vaguely saw a man who was 100 times more beautiful than the immortal in the painting walking to my side. I guessed that it must be an immortal, so I desperately resisted my sleepiness, crying and begging him to save my father. That man put a porcelain bottle next to me. Before I lost consciousness, I saw another man fall next to the immortal. The little girl points to the man in the painting. It's this man. Jing Yuan promptly asks, "What did they say?" The little girl tries hard to remember. He said to elder brother immortal, "Everything in the world has its own path of life and death. You can't save all living things in the world by only helping one person. Sometimes, doing evil isn't really evil, but to achieve great benevolence and virtue. Do you understand?" Then elder brother immortal called that man master, and then I completely fell asleep. When I woke up, if I hadn't been holding the medicine in my hand, I would have thought that I was dreaming. Jing Yuan is startled. "Master? Second brother actually has a disciple?" His heart is burning, and he's extremely excited. Although the little girl said that she wasn't sure if the person she saw was second brother. But this is the closest he's ever gotten to news about second brother. "Miss, could I trouble you to go with me to Mount Mo?" The chief of the Si-Ching tribe says without hesitation, "Of course, the great master is our savior. It's only a matter of leading the way. Wu Meng, you should go with the great master." The little girl called Wu Meng promptly nods, a bit of shyness in the corners of her eyes. Jing Yuan is about to speak when a golden light suddenly flashes at his fingertips. Eldest brother's cold voice directly penetrates into the sea of knowledge. "Jing Yuan, return quickly. Second brother has passed away." Jing Yuan's eyes widen. He only feels as if there's a loud explosion in his brain, almost shattering all of his consciousness. Polar domain. Han Yi and Ning may hurriedly enter the hall. They run into Xing Lang and Elder Chong. Both sides speak almost at the same time. "Has Jun Shang woken up? Have you found Miss Jun's whereabouts?" As their voices fall, they see the disappointment in each other's eyes. Several days had passed. Ever since that day, when the 9 stars and the moon suddenly appeared on the floating island and the glorious sun swallowed the sky, Di Mingju suddenly came out from the Chinquan mirror, but Mu Yin had completely disappeared without a trace. Even though Di Mingju has returned to High Sky Hall, he's completely unconscious. The strange thing was that the heavy injuries on his body and his crumbling godhead were somehow healed. In fact, his cultivation was even showing signs of rising. But he just couldn't wake up. Even Han Chujio couldn't find out the reason. Elder Chong let out a long sigh and forced a smile. At least the Lord has returned safely. We can also be sure that Miss June is still alive. Han Yi also follows along with the relaxed atmosphere, since we already know that those 8 space barrier passages all lead to the Xioshin continent. That means that Miss June and the other 6 unfettered suns are on the Xioshin continent. As long as we are here, what do we need to worry about? With the strength of our polar domain, even turning the entire Xioshin continent upside down wouldn't be a problem. Are you afraid that you won't be able to find Miss June? That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel? We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.